can't prove your memories weren't slightly altered. Lie down and let this settle over you like a slow fog. Every memory you hold, your first kiss, the sound of a dead relative's voice, the way your childhood bedroom looked at noon, every single one of them has passed through the filter of your brain multiple times. Each time you retrieve a memory, your brain rewrites it slightly. Details blur, emotions shift. Your brain fills in gaps with what makes sense, not with what actually happened. And the terrifying part is that you have no way to go back and check. Time machines do not exist. Video cameras did not follow you around. Your memories are the only evidence you have, and they are unreliable witnesses. Welcome to the Learn While You Sleep channel. Here, we don't force understanding. We let it settle slowly, naturally, like thoughts drifting just before sleep. And if this kind of calm exploration fits your mood tonight, you can gently support it by subscribing or pressing the hype button. It helps keep these quiet, thoughtful stories alive. And if you feel like it, where are you listening from right now? Is it late and silent, or early and full of light? Are you here to study, to relax, or simply to drift for a while? You can leave a small note in the comments, like a quiet signal from your corner of the world. Neuroscientists have demonstrated this repeatedly. In one famous study, people were shown a video of a car accident. Later, researchers asked half the group, how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other? And the other half, how fast when they hit each other? The smashed group reported higher speeds and also later claimed they saw broken glass, which was not in the video. The word alone changed their memory. That is not a flaw in you. That is how human memory works. It is reconstructive, not reproductive. You are not playing back a recording. You are painting a picture from scratch each time, using the same worn brushes. Think about a vivid memory from your childhood. Now ask yourself, do you actually remember the event? Or do you remember the last time you remembered it? Most people are remembering the memory, not the event. That is why memories fade and shift over decades. The original experience is long gone. What remains is a story your brain tells itself, and the story changes depending on your mood, your age, your current beliefs. You are not lying when you tell a changed version. You are just human. Here is the quieter implication. Your identity is built on these shifting sands. You think you know who you are because you remember what you have done and what has happened to you. But if those memories are slightly altered, then your sense of self is built on a foundation that moves. You are not a fixed person with a fixed past. You're a collection of stories your brain revises every night during sleep. The person you think you were 5 years ago may not have existed exactly that way, and you will never know. Some people find this thought disturbing. Others find it liberating. If your past can be rewritten, then you are not trapped by it. You can choose to remember events differently, not by lying, but by focusing on different details, by reframing the meaning. Therapy works partly for this reason. You cannot change what happened, but you can change the memory of what happened. And that changed memory becomes your new past. The line between truth and narrative is thinner than you think. You walk on it every day without noticing. And there is something even quieter happening beneath all of this. Each night, as you sleep, your brain replays fragments of your day, not in order, not as a clean sequence, but as scattered impressions, a face, a sound, a feeling. During this process, memories are strengthened, weakened, or subtly reshaped. What you hold on to is not random. Emotion acts like a marker, telling your brain what matters. But even that marker, can change over time. Something that once felt overwhelming can soften. Something small can grow in importance. You might notice this in your own life. A memory that used to feel sharp and immediate now feels distant, almost like it happened to someone else. Or a moment you barely noticed at the time becomes meaningful later, as if your brain quietly decided to keep it. This is how your past is continuously edited, not in a dramatic way, but in slow, almost invisible adjustments. So as you rest here, letting your thoughts drift, consider this gently. The story you carry about your life is not fixed. It is alive. It shifts with you. And that means, in a quiet way, you're always changing, not just in what you do next, but in how you understand everything that has already happened. You've already done things for the last time and didn't notice. There is a quiet tragedy woven into ordinary life. You have already eaten your last meal with someone you love, but you did not know it was the last. You have already walked a path you will never walk again, but you did not look around because you assumed you would return. You have already had a conversation that will never be repeated. The exact words, the exact light, the exact mood, and you did not pause to savor it because you thought there would be another chance. The last time happens without an announcement. It never knocks. Think about your childhood home. At some point, you left it for the final time. Maybe you were moving out, maybe selling the house, but there was a moment when you walked out the door and you never went back inside. Did you know it was the last time? Probably not. You likely thought, I'll be back next weekend, or I'll visit again soon. But life moved differently. The last time came and went, disguised as an ordinary day. That is how loss works. It does not wave goodbye. It just closes the door quietly behind you. The same is true for relationships. You have already had your last conversation with certain people, not because anyone died, though that is also true, but because lives drift apart. A friend from college, a coworker you liked, a neighbor you chatted with. One day, you spoke for the last time. Neither of you knew it. There was no fight, no goodbye, just the slow erosion of contact. And now that person exists only in your memory, not in your life. You did not notice when the last time became the last time. That is the cruelty of ordinary time. Even your own habits have last times. You have already worn a shirt for the last time before it fell apart or was donated. You have already listened to a song for the last time before it faded from your playlist. You have already eaten a food you loved before your taste changed or the restaurant closed. These are small losses, but they add up. Your life is a series of endings you never celebrate because you never see them coming. The awareness of this can either paralyze you or wake you up. If every moment could be a last time, then every moment deserves attention. Not anxious attention. You cannot live in fear of endings, but a softer attention, a quieter gratitude. When you are with someone you love, you might think, this could be the last time. That thought is not morbid. It is a reminder to look at their face, to listen to their voice, to be there. Because one day, it will be the last time, and you will not know it until after. Question to drift on. What is one thing you did recently that you now realize you might never do again? Your thoughts just appear. You don't create them. Sit quietly for a moment. Notice your breathing. Now notice the next thought that comes into your mind. Where did it come from? Did you choose it? Did you decide ahead of time to think that specific thought? Or did it simply float up from somewhere below awareness, like a bubble rising from the bottom of a dark lake? The uncomfortable answer is that you did not choose that thought. It appeared, and then you claimed it as yours. But the process of thought generation happens automatically, beneath the surface, before your conscious self gets involved. Neuroscience has shown this clearly. Using brain imaging, researchers can predict what a person will decide seconds before the person consciously knows they have decided. The brain begins preparing a choice before you are aware of it. Your conscious mind is not the CEO of your brain. It is more like a press secretary. It gets briefed after the fact, then announces the decision as if it made it. That is a disturbing realization. Who is thinking your thoughts if you are not consciously creating them? The answer is that your brain is a biological machine running its own processes. You are part of that machine, but not the sole operator. Think about where thoughts come from when you're falling asleep. Random images, fragments of sounds, odd connections. You are not deliberately generating those. They arise from neural firing patterns. The same is true during your waking hours, but you are better at filtering and labeling. You say, I'm thinking about dinner, when really, your brain's hunger and memory systems activated, and the thought appeared. You can test this. Try to have no thoughts for 10 seconds. You will fail. Because you do not control the generator. You only experience its output. This raises a strange question about responsibility. If you do not create your thoughts, can you be held morally responsible for them? Most philosophers and psychologists say yes, because you can choose which thoughts to act on and which to ignore. The first thought is automatic. The second thought, the one that judges the first or decides to follow it, that is also automatic, but it involves other parts of your brain. The line between automatic and chosen is blurry. Some Buddhist traditions have wrestled with this for millennia. Their conclusion: thoughts are not you. They are visitors. You can watch them come and go without claiming them. That insight can be liberating. When a dark or shameful thought appears, you do not have to identify with it. You can say, that is just a thought, not a reflection of who I am. The thought arose from neural noise, not from your soul. Let it pass. You do not have to fight it or follow it. You can simply observe. This is the basis of mindfulness meditation, and it works because it is true. You are not the creator of your thoughts. You are the witness of them. You trust your mind even though it lies to you. You rely on your mind for everything. Every decision, every belief, every relationship is filtered through your brain. And yet your brain is not a truth machine. It is a survival machine. It prioritizes speed over accuracy, patterns over details, stories over facts. Your brain lies to you constantly, not maliciously, but efficiently. It fills in blind spots in your vision. It invents details in your memories. It makes you think you are better than average at driving, at leadership, at kindness. These are lies, but they keep you functional. The problem is that you cannot tell which parts are true and which parts are convenient fictions. Consider change blindness. In experiments, a person is asked for directions, and during a distraction, the person is swapped with a different person. More than half of participants do not notice. Their brain tells them same person, because that is the simpler story. Your brain does not show you reality. It shows you a useful model of reality. The model leaves things out. It adds things that are not there. You trust this model because you have no alternative. But you are living in a simulation, not a digital one, but a neural one. Your visual field, for example, is not a high-definition video. You have a small area of sharp focus in the center of your vision, and everything else is blurry. But your brain fills in the blur with educated guesses and presents the result as a seamless picture. You do not see the gaps. That is a lie. A useful lie, but a lie. The same happens with your reasoning. You are biased to confirm what you already believe. You seek evidence that supports your views and ignore evidence that contradicts them. Your brain tells you this is objective thinking. It is not. It is self-protection. The scariest part is that your brain also lies about your own intentions. Studies show that people often do things for unconscious reasons. A subtle environmental cue, a subliminal word, a tiredness they do not acknowledge, and then their brain invents a conscious reason after the fact. Why did I choose that? Your brain will always have an answer, but the answer is often a post hoc fabrication. You do not know why you do most of what you do. Your brain makes up a story, and you believe it because it is your own brain telling it. Does this mean you cannot trust yourself at all? No, but it means you should hold your certainty lightly. The person who is most confident is often the person most deceived by their own brain. The person who says, "I might be wrong," is more aligned with reality. Your mind is a wonderful tool, but it is also a magician. And magicians are not trustworthy witnesses. They show you what they want you to see. The first step to thinking clearly is admitting that your own thinking is suspect. You're living in a version of reality your brain constructed. The sun does not set. The earth rotates. But you see a sunset. That is your brain's construction, a useful translation of raw data into a human experience. Color does not exist outside your brain. Light has wavelengths, but your brain turns those wavelengths into redness or blueness. Sound does not exist outside your brain. Air vibrates, but your brain turns those vibrations into a voice or a melody. Pain does not exist outside your brain. Nerves send signals, but your brain turns those signals into suffering. You are living inside a simulation that your brain builds for you moment by moment. You never experience reality directly. You experience your brain's interpretation of reality. This is not philosophy. It is neuroscience. The sensory information entering your eyes, ears, skin. It is all just electrochemical signals. Your brain takes those signals and constructs a three-dimensional, full-color, emotionally charged world for you to live in. That world is extraordinarily useful. It lets you navigate, avoid danger, find food, connect with others. But it is not the world. It is a user interface. And every user interface simplifies. It hides the messy code underneath. You have no access to the code. You only see the screen. Think about optical illusions. You know the two lines are the same length, but you cannot help seeing one as longer. Your brain's construction overrides your knowledge. That is how powerful the simulation is. Now extend that to everything. Your political beliefs, your sense of justice, your attraction to certain people, all constructed. Your brain takes ambiguous data and builds a story. Someone else's brain, with different wiring and different experiences, builds a different story. You argue about whose story is true, but neither of you has access to the raw data. You are both arguing about interfaces. This does not mean reality does not exist. There is a floor under your feet. There are other minds, but you cannot perceive them directly. You perceive your brain's model of them. That model is shaped by genetics, experience, mood, hunger, fatigue, everything. When you are tired, the world looks uglier and more threatening. That is not the world changing. That is your simulation changing. The same world, a different construction. You think you are objective. You are not. You are a simulation running on biological hardware. The liberating part is that you can change your simulation, not by changing the world, but by changing your brain. Therapy, meditation, exercise, medication. These all alter the construction. The world stays the same. Your experience of it shifts. That means your suffering is not caused by reality. It is caused by your brain's interpretation of reality. And interpretations can be rewritten. Not easily, but possible. You are not stuck with the simulation you were given. You can update the software. You're always seeing the past, never the exact present. Reach out and touch the surface beside you. Your hand makes contact. That sensation feels immediate, as if it is happening right now, but it is not. The signal from your fingertip travels up your arm, through your spinal cord, into your brain. That journey takes a measurable amount of time, milliseconds, but real. By the time your brain processes the touch, the event is already over. You're living in the past. Every sight, every sound, every sensation arrives late. Your brain works as fast as biology allows, but it cannot keep up with the present. It builds a model of what just happened and calls it now. The delay is small but meaningful. Light from an object across the room takes a few nanoseconds to reach your eye, negligible. But your visual processing system takes about 150 milliseconds to interpret that light. That is 1/10 of a second. A fly buzzing past your face has already moved by the time you see it. Your brain compensates by predicting where the fly will be, showing you a slightly imagined version. You see the past, corrected by a guess about the future. That guess is usually right, but not always. Ever swung at a bug and missed? Your guess was wrong. Think about conversations. You hear someone's words, but by the time you process them, they have already spoken more. You are never fully caught up. You are always responding to what just happened, not what is happening. The feeling of being in the moment is an illusion crafted by your brain smoothing mechanisms. It layers prediction over perception and presents the result as seamless. A magician exploits this gap. When you see the coin disappear, you are seeing your brain's late, edited version. The real trick happened in the gap between light and interpretation. This has strange implications for free will and responsibility. If you are always reacting to the past, are you ever truly choosing in the moment? Neuroscientists like Benjamin Libet demonstrated that brain activity for a movement begins before you consciously decide to move. Your conscious decision comes after the brain has already started preparing. The you that decides is a late arrival. You're not the initiator. You're the commentator, narrating actions after they begin. That feels like a blow to the ego, but you adapt. You have lived this way your whole life without noticing. The gap between event and perception also affects your emotional life. Someone says something hurtful. You feel the sting a moment later. In that tiny gap, you could choose not to react. But the gap is so small that most people cannot catch it. Mindfulness training is partly about widening that gap, learning to notice the space between stimulus and response. That space is where freedom lives. It is real, though smaller than you think. With practice, you can stretch it from milliseconds to seconds. That stretch changes everything. You stop being a puppet of the past. You become a participant in the present, a late participant, but a participant nonetheless. You'll never know how people truly feel about you. You walk away from a conversation wondering what they thought. Did they like you? Were they bored? Did they notice that awkward thing you said? You will never know. Not really. People wear social masks. They say fine when they are hurting, great when they are exhausted, maybe later when they mean no. You cannot read minds. You can only interpret behavior, and behavior is ambiguous. A smile might mean warmth, politeness, nervousness, or pity. A silence might mean comfort, anger, distraction, or deep listening. You choose an interpretation, but you cannot verify it. Even if someone tells you directly how they feel, words are imperfect. They might not know their own feelings. They might lie to protect you or themselves. They might tell the truth as they see it, but their seeing is filtered through their own biases. So you live in a fog of uncertainty about what others really think. Some people pretend this fog does not exist. They act as if they know. They say, he respects me, or she's jealous of me, with complete certainty. But that certainty is a fiction. It is a story they tell themselves to feel safe. The fog is always there. This uncertainty drives much of human anxiety. You worry about being judged, rejected, misunderstood. You try to control others' perceptions by performing, pleasing, proving. But you cannot control what happens inside someone else's head. Their feelings about you are their business, not yours. You can influence them, but you cannot know them. The harder you try to know, the more anxious you become. The wiser path is to accept the fog. Let others feel what they feel. Focus on your own behavior, not their response. That is the only part you can truly know. Paradoxically, this acceptance often improves how others feel about you. When you stop trying to read minds and control perceptions, you relax. Your relaxed energy is attractive. People feel safer around you. They may even tell you more honestly how they feel because you are not demanding a specific answer. The fog remains, but it becomes softer. It becomes a gentle mystery rather than a source of dread. There is a deeper layer. You also cannot fully know how you feel about others. Your feelings are also ambiguous, shifting, layered with contradiction. Do you love your partner, or are you comfortable? Do you admire your friend or envy them? You guess. You narrate. But the full truth is hidden from you too. So you are all walking through a fog, waving at figures you half see, guessing at their expressions. That is not a flaw. That is the human condition. The sooner you accept it, the lighter your steps become. You're constantly becoming someone else without noticing. Look at a photograph of yourself from 10 years ago. That person looks like you, but you can feel the distance. Their worries are not your worries. Their joys may seem small now. Their body carried different aches, their mind different obsessions. You have changed, gradually, invisibly, like a river reshaping a canyon over centuries. But you did not notice the changes because they happened one day at a time. You are not the same person who woke up yesterday. The difference is tiny, but added over decades, it is enormous. You are a stranger to your past self, and your future self will be a stranger to you. This is not metaphor. Your cells replace themselves. Your neural connections rewire with every experience and every night of sleep. Your beliefs shift as you encounter new information. Your personality traits drift in response to life events, relationships, and simply aging. The you that exists now is a temporary configuration. It feels permanent because the changes are slow. But slow is not the same as still. You are a process, not an object. A flame, not a stone. Most people resist this truth. They cling to a stable identity, I am an honest person. I am an introvert. I don't like that kind of music. But those statements are only true for now. You could change. You might change without even trying. The person who swore they would never move to a suburb now lives in one. The person who despised reality TV now watches it for comfort. The person who loved their job now dreads it. You are not betraying your past self by changing. You are simply becoming who you are now. The freedom in this is enormous. If you are constantly becoming someone else, you are not trapped by your past mistakes. The person who failed or hurt others is not fully you anymore. That person was a previous version. You can learn from them, apologize for them, but you do not have to be them. You can also stop defending old beliefs that no longer serve you. You can say, I used to think that, but I am different now. That is not hypocrisy. That is growth. There is also a sadness. You will lose parts of yourself that you loved. The child's wonder, the teenager's intensity, the young adult's fearlessness, these fade. You cannot hold on to them. They are gone, replaced by whatever you are now. And what you are now will also fade. So you are always in a state of loss and gain. The trick is to notice the gains, to appreciate who you are becoming, not just mourn who you were. The stream flows. You can swim in it, or you can stand on the bank complaining. One is life. The other is waiting to die. You can't step outside your own thoughts to check them. You have a thought. It feels true because it is your thought. But how can you verify it? To check a thought, you would need another thought. A second opinion from inside your own head. That second thought is also produced by the same system, with the same biases. It is like asking a liar if they are telling the truth. They might be sincere, but they are still the liar. Your brain cannot give you an objective view of itself. You are trapped inside your own consciousness with no window and no exit. Everything you know through a filter you cannot remove. This is the problem of introspection. You can look inward and examine your feelings, your motives, your beliefs. But the act of looking inward changes what you see. And the instrument you are looking with, your awareness, is part of the system being examined. It is like trying to see your own eyes without a mirror. You can see reflections, but they are distorted. You can get feedback from others, but they are also trapped in their own skulls. No one has a God's eye view. Everyone is guessing, including you. Take a simple example. You are angry. You think you know why. Your brain constructs a story. I am angry because he was rude. But maybe you are actually angry because you are tired, hungry, and the rudeness was just the trigger. Your brain will not tell you that. It will give you the most plausible narrative, not the truest one. You will believe it, and you will have no way to check, because checking would require an impartial inner judge, and there is none. Therapy works partly by externalizing this process. A therapist asks you questions that force you to consider alternative explanations for your thoughts and feelings. They act as a mirror, but a mirror you can trust more than your own introspections, because they are outside your head. Still, even a therapist is a human with biases. You are forever relying on imperfect instruments. The only honest stance is humility. You do not know yourself as well as you think. Your thoughts are not facts. They are interpretations. And interpretations can always be wrong. The upside of this trap: if you cannot trust your thoughts completely, you can also stop taking them so seriously. A thought appears. I am a failure. That is not truth. That is a mental event. You can observe it without believing it. You can say, there is a thought that says I am a failure, instead of I am a failure. The difference is everything. You step out of the thought not by leaving your mind, but by changing your relationship to it. You stop being the prisoner of your inner monologue. You become its witness. That is as close to stepping outside as anyone gets. You don't know how your story ends, but it's already being written. You are living your life as if you are the author, choosing each plot twist. But the page is turning whether you choose or not. The ending is coming. You do not know when or how. It could be tomorrow or in 50 years. The final chapter will be written without your input. You will not get to revise it. You will not get to read it in advance. And yet, the story is already being written by every small choice you make, every direction you turn, every word you speak or leave unsaid. You are co-authoring an ending you will never see coming. Think about a character in a novel. They do not know they are in a novel. They make decisions based on their desires and fears, and those decisions lead to an ending the author already knows. You are like that character. Your brain's prediction systems are constantly writing the next paragraphs based on the past. Your habits, your environment, your genetics. These are the ghostwriters. They determine much more than your conscious intentions. The illusion of free will is strong, but scientists and philosophers have long debated whether you truly choose or merely feel like you choose. Consider the trajectory of your life. Did you choose to be born into your family? Did you choose your native language, your initial beliefs, your early traumas or privileges? No, those were given. They shaped everything that followed. You made choices within that shaping, but the range of choices was already narrowed by what came before. The ending of your story will also be shaped by forces beyond your control. An accident, an illness, a chance meeting, a shift in the economy. You can influence the ending, but you cannot determine it. This sounds bleak, but it is also freeing. If you are not the sole author, you do not have to carry the entire weight of the story. You can relax into the unfolding. You can make the next choice as best you can, then let go of the outcome. The ending will arrive whether you worry or not. So worrying does nothing. Instead, you can focus on the page you are on right now, the sentence you are writing with your breath, your attention, your presence. That sentence matters, not because it controls the ending, but because it is the only sentence you actually get to live. The awareness that your story is already being written by time, by biology, by chance, can also inspire urgency. Not panic, but a quiet knowing that the pages are finite. You do not know how many are left, so you might want to write something worth reading. Not for an audience, for yourself, in the moment of writing. Because when the ending comes, you will not be looking back at the whole book. You will be on the final page, living the final sentence. And what you do with that sentence is the only thing that will ever matter again. You don't remember most of your life, but you still call it yours. Your life has spanned thousands of days. Each day held roughly 16 waking hours. Each hour contained countless moments. The way light fell on a table, the sound of a distant lawnmower, the feeling of a shirt collar against your neck. Almost all of these moments are gone, not just faded, but completely absent from your memory. You cannot recall what you ate for lunch 3 weeks ago on a Tuesday. You cannot picture the face of the cashier who smiled at you last month. These experiences happened to you. They shaped you in ways you will never trace, and then they vanished. You called this collection of vanishing moments your life. Neuroscientists estimate that the human brain forgets roughly 99% of its experiences. Only the most emotionally charged, the most repeated, or the most novel events leave lasting traces. The rest dissolve. You are not a video archive. You are a sieve. And yet you feel a strong sense of identity with this sieve's contents. You say, I am someone who has traveled to Paris, even though you remember only a handful of images from that trip. You say, I'm close to my mother, even though you cannot recall 90% of the conversations you have had with her. Your identity is built on a tiny fraction of the evidence. Consider a thought experiment. If a person lost all memory of a 10-year period, would that period still be part of their life? Most would say yes. The events happen to them even if they cannot access them. But what if the memories were not lost but simply never formed? What if you walked through a museum as a child, absorbing nothing, and now have zero recall? Was that museum visit part of your life? It was part of your chronological history. But is it part of your life? The story you tell yourself? The boundary blurs. You are claiming ownership of experiences you do not possess. The comforting side of this forgetting is that painful memories also fade. The heartbreak that felt eternal years ago is now a dull ache you can barely summon. The embarrassment that made you cringe for weeks is now a forgotten footnote. Your brain's forgetfulness is a mercy. It prunes the garden of your past so that new things can grow. Without forgetting, you would be crushed under the weight of every minor irritation, every awkward silence, every small disappointment. Forgetting is not a flaw. It is a survival mechanism. But there is also a loss you cannot retrieve. The ordinary beauties, a child's laugh, a sunset you watched without photographing, a conversation that made you feel understood. These also fade. You cannot force yourself to remember them. They slip away like water through fingers. That is why people take photos, write journals, tell stories. They are trying to fight the sieve. And they lose most battles. So your life, as you know it, is not the life you lived. It is a heavily abridged edition, edited by a brain that cares more about survival than accuracy. You've already had conversations you'll never think about again. Step back and imagine a map of all the words you have spoken in your life. Most of them are not plotted. They vanish into air the moment they leave your mouth, like steam from a kettle. You have exchanged greetings, asked directions, made small talk, said bless you to a sneezing stranger. Thousands of exchanges. Almost none of them will ever cross your mind again. They are gone, not because they were meaningless, but because your brain cannot afford to store everything. It prioritizes. And most conversations are not priorities. Think about a cashier you spoke to last week. You said, thank you. They said, have a good one. That conversation lasted 3 seconds. It will never return to your awareness. But in that moment, you connected with another human. Your voices mingled. Your nervous systems briefly synchronized. Something real happened, and then it was erased. You will not miss it because you do not know it is missing. That is how forgetting works. You do not feel the absence. You only feel the presence of what remains. This has a strange implication. You are having conversations right now that you will never remember. Not just trivial ones, but perhaps important ones. You might ask a friend about their health, then forget you asked. You might give advice that you will not recall giving. The other person will remember. They will be shaped by your words. But you will carry no record. You are a river of speech, constantly flowing, and the water that passes you is gone. You cannot drink from the same conversation twice. The upside is that you are freer than you think. Because you will not remember most conversations, you do not need to obsess over every word. The awkward thing you said at a party, most people will forget it within days. You will too, eventually. The pressure to be perfect in every exchange is based on a false premise, that conversations are permanent. They are not. They are ephemeral as clouds. You can release the weight of verbal mistakes. Let them evaporate. They were never solid to begin with. The downside is that you cannot rely on memory to guide you. Your brain will present a handful of conversations as representative. The fight with your partner, the compliment from your boss, the painful silence with a parent. But those are not the whole picture. They are samples. Your brain selects for emotion, not frequency. So you might believe you are always criticized because you remember the criticisms, while the thousands of neutral or positive exchanges are forgotten. Your memory lies about what is normal. The only way to correct this is to trust data, not recall. Keep a log if you want truth. Otherwise, accept that your memory is a storyteller, not a journalist. One day, someone will forget you completely. You exist in the minds of others. When they think of you, you are real. When they do not, you are not. And one day, after you have lived your life, and perhaps after you have died, the last person who remembers you will forget. Not necessarily because they have a poor memory, but because time erodes everything. Their recollection of your face will blur. The sound of your voice will fade. Stories about you will be told less often, then never. Eventually, the last mental trace of you will dissolve. You will be gone from every living mind. You will be as if you never existed. This is not pessimism. It is a fact. The vast majority of humans who have ever lived are completely forgotten. No one knows their names, their faces, their struggles, their joys. They lived full, rich lives, and then their lives ended, and the memory of them ended too. You will join them. The only question is when. Perhaps in a few decades, perhaps in a few centuries. But the forgetting will come. The universe does not hold grudges or award points for being remembered. It simply moves on. Think about your great-grandparents. Do you know their full names, their favorite foods, the sound of their laughter? Probably not. And they loved you, or would have if they had known you. Their existence has already faded to a few photographs and a few stories. Those too will fade. This is not a tragedy. It is the natural course of things. Trees fall and turn to soil. Stars burn out and scatter their elements. Memories dissolve. You are not being singled out. You are being included in the vast, ordinary cycle of departure. The awareness of this forgetting can crush you or free you. If you are trying to build a legacy that will last forever, you are chasing wind. Nothing lasts forever. Not monuments, not books, not names carved in stone. The stone erodes. The language dies. The civilization crumbles. Eventually, everything is forgotten. So you might as well stop trying to be remembered. Live your life for its own sake. Enjoy the sunshine because it feels good, not because someone will remember you enjoying it. Love people because love is beautiful in the moment, not because your love will be recorded. There is a quieter version of this. You are also forgetting others. You have already forgotten people who mattered to you. A childhood friend whose last name you cannot recall. A teacher who changed your life, but whose face is now a blur. They exist in you only as a wisp, a feeling without a name. You have forgotten them, and they are fine. They lived. They died. They are not suffering from your forgetfulness. so you will also be fine when others forget you. The forgetting is neutral. It is not a punishment. It is just time. You've already experienced moments you thought would last forever, and they didn't. Remember a moment when you were intensely happy. A graduation, a wedding, a sunset with a lover. In that moment, you may have thought, I want this to last forever. You might have even believed it could, but it did not. The moment passed. The feeling faded. You are left with a memory that grows dimmer each year. That is the nature of experience. Intensity is always temporary. The highest highs flatten. The deepest loves become familiar, then sometimes distant. The moments you swore would define you forever become footnotes. Think about a time you were heartbroken. You thought the pain would never end. You could not imagine a future where you felt okay. But the pain ended. It always does. Not because the loss was small, but because human nervous systems cannot sustain high emotion indefinitely. They adapt. They normalize. The grief that felt like drowning becomes a dull ache, then a scar, then a story you tell without tears. The moment you thought would last forever, the terrible one, also passed. You are still here. This impermanence is built into your biology. Your brain releases chemicals that create pleasure or pain, and then it reabsorbs them. Tolerance builds. You cannot stay at the peak because the peak is a chemical spike, not a plateau. Trying to hold on to joy is like trying to hold water in an open hand. The tighter you grip, the faster it leaks. The only way to experience joy fully is to let it flow through you without grasping. To say, this is beautiful, and it will end, and that is okay. That is wisdom. The alternative is a life of constant disappointment. You have probably heard the Buddhist teaching that attachment causes suffering. This is what it means. You attach to a moment, believing it should last. When it ends, you suffer, not because the ending is wrong, but because your expectation was wrong. Moments end. That is their nature. The problem is not the ending. The problem is the belief that things should not end. If you can accept that every moment is a visitor, here for a short stay, then you can welcome it fully and release it gently. No suffering, just gratitude for the visit. The moments that felt permanent, both the glorious and the terrible, have passed. You are standing in a different stream now. That is not a loss. That is life moving, as it always does. The only truly permanent thing is change itself. So you might as well stop fighting. Instead of trying to freeze moments, try to appreciate them in real time. Notice that you are noticing. Feel the feeling. Then let it go. It will go anyway. The only choice is whether you go with it willingly or get dragged. Your personality is just patterns that didn't change. People say, I am an introvert, or I am a worrier, as if these traits are carved in stone. But look closer. Your personality is not a thing. It is a collection of repeated behaviors, patterns that have persisted because they worked well enough, or because you never tried to change them. You are shy around strangers because you were shy the last 10 times, and before that, and before that. But each instance of shyness is a fresh event. The pattern is a habit, not an essence. You could, in theory, act differently tomorrow. The only barrier is momentum. Personality psychology has shown that traits are surprisingly stable over time, but not perfectly stable. People change. They become more conscientious as they age, more emotionally stable, sometimes more open or less open depending on life events. The you at 20 is different from the you at 40. The difference is gradual, but real. So even the stability is not permanent. You are not stuck being who you are. You are just who you have been behaving as recently. Consider a trait you dislike in yourself. Impatience, perhaps. That impatience is a pattern of responses to delays. Your brain has learned that impatience leads to some reward. Faster action from others, relief from waiting. And so it repeats the pattern. But you could unlearn it. You could practice waiting. You could train yourself to relax during delays. The pattern would shift. Your personality would change. Not because you discovered your true self, but because you built a new habit. Personality is not discovered. It is built. This is liberating. You are not doomed to be the person you have been. The past does not own you. The patterns that have defined you are just neural pathways. Pathways can weaken from disuse and strengthen from repetition. You can choose to walk a different route. It will be hard at first. New paths are overgrown. But each time you choose differently, you clear a little more brush. Eventually, the new path becomes the default. That is not faking it. That is becoming. The flip side is that you are also not as special as you think. Your quirks and oddities are also patterns. Learned, reinforced, repeatable. The things you love and hate, the way you laugh, the things that make you angry. All patterns shaped by your environment and your history. There is no immaterial soul behind them. There is just a brain that has learned to respond in certain ways. That can feel diminishing, or it can feel humbling. You are not a fixed star. You are a river, and rivers can be redirected. You didn't choose most of what you believe. Sit with your strongest conviction. Maybe it is political, religious, or about a person in your life. Now ask yourself, did you truly choose this belief, or did it grow in you like a weed? You were born into a certain place, a certain family, a certain language. That culture poured beliefs into your young mind before you had the defenses to question them. Your parents' opinions became your default. Your school's curriculum set your baseline. Your friends' laughter or scorn shaped which ideas felt safe and which felt dangerous. By the time you were old enough to choose, the garden was already planted. You have been pruning, not planting. Psychologists call this the credibility bias. You believe information from sources you trust, and you trust sources you grew up with or identify with. A child raised in a conservative household will likely hold conservative beliefs as an adult, not because they evaluated both sides carefully, but because those beliefs were the air they breathed. The same is true for liberal households, religious households, atheist households. Your beliefs are largely an accident of birth. You could have been born in a different country with a different religion and different politics, and you would believe those instead with the same intensity. That is not a knock on your intelligence. It is a knock on your independence. Consider a belief you once held strongly and now reject. Think back to that earlier self. Did you feel that you had chosen that belief? Of course you did. You felt certain. You could have argued for it passionately. And then something changed. New information, a life experience, a relationship. You realized you were wrong. That earlier certainty was an illusion. You were not choosing. You were being shaped, and the same shaping continues now. There are beliefs you hold today that you will reject in a decade. You cannot see them because you are inside them. Social media amplifies this effect. Algorithms feed you content that reinforces what you already believe. You click, it learns, it feeds more. You feel that your beliefs are confirmed by evidence, but the evidence is selected for you. You are not surveying the full landscape. You are walking in a hall of mirrors. The belief that you are a free-thinking individual is itself a belief you did not fully choose. It was taught to you by a culture that values independence. But independence is just another shaped value. The escape from this trap is not to stop believing. It is to hold your beliefs with an open hand. To say, I believe this, but I know I could be wrong. I know that I am a product of my history. I will listen to evidence that challenges me. That humility is the only honest response to the fact that you did not choose your starting point. You were thrown into a world of beliefs. The most you can do is question them actively, seek out genuine disagreement, and update when the evidence demands. That is not choosing your beliefs from scratch. That is steering a ship that was already at sea. You've already met people who will never cross your mind again. Close your eyes and picture a face. It might be a friend or a family member. Now try to picture the face of the person who sat next to you on a bus 3 years ago. You cannot. They are gone from your mind. Yet you met them. You exchanged a glance, maybe a nod. They existed as fully as you do, with a lifetime of memories, worries, hopes. And then you never thought of them again. This happens hundreds, thousands of times in a lifetime. You are surrounded by a parade of people who become invisible the moment they leave your sight. The brutal truth is that you are also invisible to them. You have passed through countless lives, leaving no trace. The cashier who handed you change will never recall your face. The person who held the door for you has already forgotten. You are a ghost in their memory, and they are a ghost in yours. This is not cruelty. It is simply the limits of human attention. There are too many faces, too many interactions. Your brain filters almost all of them out. Only the ones with emotional charge survive. The rest vanish. Think about people you knew in school, classmates, teammates, neighbors. Most of them are now strangers. If you pass them on the street, you might not recognize them. They have faded into the fog of your past, and they have forgotten you too. The intense friendships, the petty rivalries, the crushes, all dissolved into nothing. Those people once filled your world. Now they are less than shadows. Your life is a revolving door. People enter, stay for a season, leave. Most never come back, even in thought. This realization can make you feel small. You are not the center of anyone's universe except your own. To others, you are background noise, but it can also make you generous. If you are going to be forgotten anyway, you might as well be forgotten kindly. A small warmth, a brief moment of presence. These cost you little and may linger longer than you think. Not forever, but longer than a cold glance. The person who holds the door with a smile might still be forgotten, but the forgetting is gentler. There is also a strange comfort. Your embarrassing moments, your awkward exchanges, your social fumbles, most of them are already forgotten by everyone but you. And even you will forget them eventually. The memory you are cringing about right now is already vanishing from other people's minds. They have moved on. They are thinking about their own lives, their own embarrassments. You are not as memorable as you fear. That is not a blow to your ego. It is a release from its prison. You can't remember what it felt like to be your past self. Try to recall a strong emotion from 5 years ago, a heartbreak, a triumph, a deep fear. You remember the facts, what happened, where, who was there. You might even remember thinking, this is terrible, or this is wonderful. But can you summon the actual sensation, the raw, visceral feeling that flooded your body? Most people cannot. You remember that you felt something, but you do not re-feel it. The past self's emotional world is locked away, inaccessible. You can describe it like a historian, but you cannot live it like a time traveler. This is called emotional memory decay. The neural pathways that created intense feelings weaken over time unless they are repeatedly reactivated. Even trauma memories, which can remain vivid, lose their original somatic intensity. The panic you felt during a car accident is not the same now as it was then. Your brain has softened it. That is a mercy. But it also means you are disconnected from your own history. You cannot truly know what your past self suffered or celebrated. You only have a summary, a highlight reel narrated by a later version of you. Think about a childhood joy, the thrill of a birthday party, the pride of learning to ride a bike. You remember the event, but the feeling? It is faint, like a distant radio station. That joy was real, and it is gone. You cannot get it back. You can only make new joy. The same applies to grief. The raw agony of a loss fades. You might feel guilty about that fading. Why don't I miss them as much? But the fading is not betrayal. It is how brains survive. If emotions never faded, you would be crushed under their weight. The practical consequence: you're often a poor judge of your past emotional states. You think you were happier or more miserable than you actually were. Your memory exaggerates the highs and lows because those are the stories you tell. The ordinary neutral days are erased, so your past feels more dramatic than it was. That drama becomes your identity. I have been through so much, you say, and it is true, but the feeling of so much is a construction, not a replay. This disconnect also means you cannot reliably use past emotions to guide future decisions. You might avoid a situation because you remember it as painful, but the pain you remember is a pale copy. The actual situation might be different now. You are a different person now. Your past self's feelings are not your feelings. They are just data. Useful data, but not a command. You can choose to override them. The past does not have veto power over your present. There are things about you that everyone else sees, but you never will. You have a blind spot, not in your vision, in your self-awareness. Others notice things about you that you cannot see. Your tone of voice when you are tired, your habit of tapping your foot in meetings, the way you interrupt people without noticing, the slight smile you make when you are nervous. These are external to your consciousness. You cannot observe yourself from the outside. You can only guess based on feedback and video recordings. But most people never seek that feedback. They walk through life with a portrait of themselves that no one else would recognize. Psychologists call this the introspection illusion. You believe you know yourself because you have access to your inner thoughts. But your inner thoughts are not the whole picture. Your behavior is also shaped by unconscious processes, by habits, by physical tics. Others see these. You do not. A friend might know that you become defensive when criticized, but you feel that you are simply explaining yourself. A partner might notice that you sigh before every difficult conversation, but you have never heard your own sigh. The gap between self-perception and external perception is often vast. Think about a video recording of yourself. Most people cringe. Do I sound like that? Do I really gesture that much? That cringe is the shock of seeing your public self for the first time. But that public self is the real you to everyone else. They have been seeing that version all along. Your internal experience of yourself, thoughtful, calm, measured, may be a fantasy. The real you, the observed you, is different, and you cannot see it except through mirrors and recordings. This has practical consequences for relationships. When someone gives you feedback that contradicts your self-image, your instinct is to reject it. That's not me, you think, but maybe it is. Maybe you are the last to know. The most valuable gift you can receive is honest feedback from people who care about you. Not because it flatters you, but because it shows you the blind spots. The things everyone else sees but you never will. Those are the places where you can grow, if you can bear to look. Consider asking 3 people you trust, what is one thing I do that I seem unaware of? Their answers might sting, but they are more accurate than your introspection. Your inner world is real, but it is not the whole truth. The truth includes your external impact, and you are legally blind to that impact. The only remedy is humility and curiosity. Assume you are missing something, then ask, then listen, then try to see what they see. You will never fully succeed, but you can get closer. You've already made decisions that defined your life without realizing it. Look back at your life's major turning points. You probably think of big moments, choosing a college, accepting a job, marrying a person. But research on life trajectories shows that small, seemingly trivial decisions often have outsized effects. The day you decided to take a different route home and met someone who became a friend. The evening you chose to attend a party you almost skipped, where you heard about a job opportunity. The moment you answered a phone call from an unknown number. You did not know these were turning points. They felt random, but they shaped everything. Psychologists call these non-significant significant events. Decisions made without much thought, under low stakes, that later cascade into major outcomes. You cannot predict which small choices will matter. Your brain is not a fortune teller. So you drift, making thousands of micro decisions daily, and a handful of them will alter your entire future, but you never know which ones. The decision to say hello to a stranger might lead to a marriage. The decision to stay home might spare you from an accident. You live in a probability cloud, and hindsight is the only clarity. Consider the most important relationship in your life. How did you meet? Was it a grand, intentional plan? Or was it a series of coincidences? A cancelled meeting? A chance seating arrangement? A mutual friend's casual introduction? Most people's defining relationships arise from such randomness. You did not choose your partner so much as you stumbled into them. That does not diminish the love. It just reveals the illusion of control. You are building your life from Lego bricks you did not select. This realization can induce anxiety. If small, unnoticed decisions shape my life, how can I ensure good outcomes? The answer, you cannot. You can only increase the odds. Be present. Say yes to invitations more often than no. Explore new routes, new conversations, new books. Each small exploration is a lottery ticket. Most will be worthless, but one might change everything. The person who never takes the small risks has no chance at the big rewards. Not because they are unlucky, but because they never bought a ticket. The quieter implication is that you should forgive yourself for past mistakes. You made decisions with incomplete information. You could not know which ones would matter. That is not a failure. That is life. And often, what seemed like a mistake at the time, a lost job, a broken relationship, later reveals itself as a redirect to something better. You could not see that either. So be gentle with your past self. They were flying blind. They did their best, and their best brought you here. You can't go back and check if your memories are accurate. Imagine a police officer asking you to recall a license plate you saw 2 weeks ago. You would laugh. Of course, you cannot remember that. But you treat your deeper memories as if they are immune to this same decay. Your first kiss, the birth of a sibling, a childhood injury. You remember fragments, maybe images, maybe the story your family told you afterward. But you cannot rewind time to verify any of it. The camera was not rolling. Your memory is the only evidence, and memory is a known liar. You have a case with no witnesses, except a witness who changes their testimony every time you ask. Psychologist Elizabeth Loftus spent her career demonstrating how easily memories are altered, implanted, or erased. In one study, she convinced adults that they had been lost in a shopping mall as children. A completely false memory. They not only believed it, but added details, emotions, even recollections of what their mother said. Their brains constructed a past that never happened. And there is no test to distinguish fabricated memories from real ones. They feel the same. The same neural networks fire. Your childhood memory of getting lost could be real, partially real, or entirely invented. You will never know. Think about a family story that gets retold at gatherings. Each retelling changes slightly. Eventually, no one remembers the original event, only the last version of the story. That version becomes what happened, and you believe it because everyone else does. But collective belief is not accuracy. Groups can collectively misremember. That is how false confessions happen, how eyewitness testimony fails. Your most cherished memory might be the group's best guess, not the truth. The unsettling part is that you cannot even trust your emotional certainty. The more emotional a memory, the more likely your brain has altered it to fit a narrative. You remember a betrayal as worse than it was because the pain rewrites the details. You remember a triumph as more glorious because the pride colors the scene. You're not lying. You are just human. But you are also wrong, and you will never know how wrong. Does this mean you cannot trust any memory? Not exactly. It means you should hold memories like photographs, useful, evocative, but not definitive. A photograph captures one moment from one angle. It is not the full truth of that moment. Your memories are similar. They are interpretations, not recordings. So you can still use them to navigate life, to feel connected to your past, to learn lessons, but do not die on the hill of their accuracy. Let them be fuzzy. Let them change. That is what they will do anyway. You'll never experience being someone else. Only imagine it. You have wondered what it feels like to be another person. A celebrity, a stranger on the street, a historical figure. You can imagine their emotions, their thoughts, their perspective. But imagination is not experience. You are always trapped inside your own skull. Every attempt to understand another person is an attempt to map them onto your own neural landscape. You feel what you imagine they would feel, based on what you have felt. That is not empathy. That is projection. True access to another's inner world is impossible. You will never know what it is like to be them, only what it is like to be you pretending to be them. Philosophers call this the problem of other minds. You infer that others have minds because they behave like you, but you cannot verify it. For all you know, everyone around you could be a sophisticated automaton with no inner experience. That is not likely, but it is possible. The more immediate consequence is that your empathy is always limited. You can sympathize, you can care, you can help, but you cannot truly feel their pain as they feel it. Their joy is theirs alone. Your attempts to share it are beautiful, but they are approximations. Think about a close friend who is grieving. You have grieved too, so you think you understand. But their grief is shaped by their history, their relationship with the lost person, their current circumstances. Your grief is different. You are not feeling what they feel. You are feeling a memory of your own grief, triggered by their situation. That is not the same. Recognizing this gap does not make you cold. It makes you humble. You stop saying, "I know exactly how you feel." You start saying, "I cannot know exactly, but I am here." This limitation also applies to joy. You cannot fully share in another's happiness. You can celebrate with them, but the internal sensation is theirs. Your happiness about their happiness is your own feeling, not a copy of theirs. That is why people can celebrate the same event with differing intensities. The event is shared. The experience is not. You're alone in your mind. Everyone is. The world is a crowd of solitudes. The freeing part of this realization: you do not need to fully understand others to connect with them. Connection does not require perfect empathy. It requires presence, kindness, and the willingness to be curious. You ask, "What is it like for you?" And you listen. You do not assume. You do not project. You let them tell you. And even then, their words are translations of inner experience, not the experience itself. But those translations are the best bridge you have. Cross them with care. You're living a life that could have been completely different. Every choice you made, every chance encounter, every missed opportunity. These are the narrow path you walked. But behind you lie infinite branching roads. The job you did not take. The person you did not marry. The city you did not move to. The sentence you did not say. Each alternative path would have led to a different version of you. A different career, different friends, different joys and sorrows. That version is as real as you are, in the sense that it could have existed, and it does not. You are living one of billions of possible lives, and you will never know what the others would have felt like. Physicists and philosophers debate whether other branches actually exist, the many worlds interpretation, or are just possibilities. For your experience, the difference does not matter. What matters is the weight of the road not taken. Regret, nostalgia, longing. These are feelings about the ghosts of alternative lives. What if I had studied art instead of accounting? That ghost haunts some people for decades. But you cannot live a ghost life. You can only live this one. The ghost is a thought, not a path. Consider a small decision yesterday. You chose tea over coffee, a minor shift. But that shift had consequences. Your energy level, your conversation with the barista, the minute you saved or lost. A different choice would have rippled outward, changing the rest of the day in ways you cannot trace. You live in a butterfly effect, and you cannot see the wings. All you can do is notice that your current reality is fragile. Any small change in the past would have produced a different present. You are here by a thread. The danger of this thought is paralysis. If everything could have been different, why choose anything? The answer is that you have to choose, because not choosing is also a choice. You are already living a life. The only question is whether you live it regretting the branches you did not take, or you live it fully on the branch you are on. The other branches are imaginary, helpful for learning perhaps, but not for living. You cannot walk two paths at once. The gift of this thought is gratitude. Your life, with all its flaws, is a miracle of contingency. Trillions of prior events had to align exactly for you to be here, reading these words in this moment. That alignment is not proof of destiny, It is proof of improbability. You are a statistical accident, and that makes you precious. The branch you are on is the only one that ever had you on it. Honor that. Do not spend too much time gazing at the others. You didn't notice most of today while it was happening. Think back to your morning. Can you remember the exact sensation of your feet touching the floor when you got out of bed? The taste of your first sip of water? The sound of traffic outside your window? Probably not. Those moments passed through you without registering. You were present in body, but not in awareness. Most of your day is like that. A blur of automatic behaviors, habitual movements, unnoticed sensations. You live only a fraction of your life consciously. The rest is autopilot. Neuroscientists estimate that up to 90% of your daily behaviors are habitual. You brush your teeth without thinking, drive to work without remembering the turns, respond to "how are you?" with a script. Your brain automates these to save energy for what seems important. But the cost is that you miss most of your own existence. You're asleep at the wheel of your life, waking only for emergencies or novelty. The ordinary moments, which are most moments, slip away unnoticed. Consider a meditation practice. The goal is often to bring attention to the present moment, to the breath, to a sensation, to a sound. That is difficult because your brain fights it. The present moment is boring to the autopilot. It wants the next thing, the novel thing, the threat or reward. So you live in anticipation or recollection, rarely in the actual now. But the now is the only time you are alive. The past is gone. The future is not here. Your life happens in milliseconds of now, and you spend most of those milliseconds elsewhere. This is not a moral failing. It is how brains evolved. A brain that was constantly present would be eaten by a predator because it would not notice the rustle in the bushes. Your autopilot is a survival tool, but survival is not the same as living. You can survive on autopilot. To truly live, you need to wake up occasionally, to notice the warmth of the sun on your arm, the texture of food, the expression on a loved one's face. These are small awakenings. They are free, and they turn a forgotten day into a remembered one. The good news is that you can train your attention. Like a muscle, it weakens without use and strengthens with practice. Put a reminder on your phone. Notice something. Several times a day, pause, look around, feel something, listen. These micro breaks cost seconds, but pay in presence. Over time, you will catch more of your life as it happens. You will not feel like a ghost haunting your own existence. You will feel like the one who is actually here. You've forgotten entire days that once felt important. Flip through a calendar from 5 years ago. Find a Tuesday. What happened that day? You have no idea. That day, at the time, felt real. You woke up, you ate, you worked, you talked to people. You had thoughts, feelings, worries. That day contained your entire world for 16 hours. And now, it is gone. Erased. You cannot retrieve a single image from it. It mattered then. It matters nothing now. Your life is filled with such erased days. They are not lost. They were never kept. Your brain deleted them to make space for more recent events. Think about a week of vacation you took a decade ago. You remember highlights, a beach, a meal, a laugh. But most of that week is blank. The hours in between, the waiting, the small conversations, the tiredness, gone. Those moments were part of your experience at the time. You could have described them then. Now they are dust. The vacation has been condensed into a postcard. and eventually the postcard will fade too. This forgetting is not random. Your brain prioritizes emotional intensity, novelty, and repetition. Ordinary days, even entire ordinary weeks, fail all three criteria, so they are pruned. The you that lived those days is gone. The you that remembers is a different person, living in a different body, with different neurons. The continuity of yourself is an illusion. There is no continuous self. There is a series of snapshots connected by a story you tell yourself. The gaps in the story are vast. You just do not see them. The practical implication is that your current worries are also likely to be forgotten. The argument you had today, the stress about a deadline, the small humiliation, these will fade into the same fog as that lost Tuesday. Not tomorrow, but soon. In a year, you will struggle to recall them. In 5 years, they will be gone. That is not minimizing your pain. It is putting it in perspective. The pain is real now, but it is not permanent. Your brain will erase it as it erases most things, so you can choose to hold it lightly. It will not hold on to you. There is a sadness too. The beautiful ordinary days, the quiet Sundays, the unremarkable evenings with loved ones, these also fade. You cannot preserve them. No amount of journaling can capture the feeling. The feeling is gone. All you can do is appreciate it while it lasts. To be present for the ordinary day, knowing it will be forgotten, and to appreciate it anyway. That is not futile. That is the deepest form of gratitude. Thank you, ordinary day, for being here now. Goodbye, ordinary day. I will not remember you, but you happened, and that is enough. You're always slightly misunderstanding reality. Stand in a room and look at the corner where two walls meet the ceiling. You see 3 lines meeting at a point, but you are not seeing the true geometry. Your brain takes 2-dimensional images from each eye and constructs a 3-dimensional model. That model is a guess, usually a good guess, but still a guess. Optical illusions prove that your visual system can be fooled. The lines are the same length. The colors are identical. But you cannot see it. Your brain insists on its incorrect interpretation. And you trust it, always, even when it is wrong. This is not limited to vision. Your understanding of every situation is a brain-built model. You see a friend looking at their phone and assume they are ignoring you. That is a model. Maybe they are reading bad news. Maybe they are checking the time. Your brain chooses the most likely explanation based on past experience and current mood, but most likely is not true. You walk through life interpreting events with a machine that evolved to survive, not to be accurate. The machine prioritizes speed and emotional coherence over truth. So you misunderstand constantly, slightly, enough to matter. Consider a conversation where you felt insulted. The other person said something. Your brain interpreted it as an attack. But what if they were tired? What if they were quoting someone else? What if they have a different sense of humor? Your interpretation felt certain. Certainty is a feeling, not evidence. Your brain gives you that feeling to motivate action, but the feeling can be wrong. And you will never know which interpretations are wrong and which are right, because you cannot step outside your own head to compare. Psychologists call this naive realism, the belief that you see the world as it truly is, and that others who disagree are biased or ignorant. Everyone suffers from naive realism. Everyone thinks they are the rational one. That is why arguments are so hard to resolve. Each person trusts their own model and distrusts the others. But both models are incomplete. Both are misinterpretations. The truth, if it exists, is hidden somewhere in the gap between them. You cannot reach it. You can only get closer by listening, doubting, and admitting that your understanding is always slightly wrong. The freedom in this is that you do not have to be certain. You can hold your interpretations lightly. Say, "I might be misunderstanding," and mean it. That phrase is not weakness. It is the only honest response to a brain that guesses for a living. You can't pause your mind, even if you want to. Try to stop thinking, right now. Command your mind to be empty. What happens? Thoughts keep arising. You cannot turn off the generator. Even during sleep, your brain produces dreams. Even under anesthesia, there is residual activity. Your mind is not a machine with an on-off switch. It is a river. You can stand on the bank and watch it flow, but you cannot stop the current. The thought you just had, "I'm trying to stop thinking," that is also a thought. The effort to stop produces more thoughts. You are trapped in an endless stream. Meditators spend years learning to quiet the mind, but even the most advanced cannot achieve complete silence. They can reduce the volume, lengthen the gaps between thoughts, but the stream continues. That is not a failure. That is how a living brain works. Thoughts are not mistakes. They are the brain's normal output, like a heart's beating. Demanding that your mind be silent is like demanding that your heart stop. It would kill you. The implication is that you cannot control your thoughts by force. You can only redirect your attention. When a thought arises, you do not have to fight it. You can notice it, label it, thinking, and gently return to your breath or your task. That is not stopping the mind. That is steering the mind. The thoughts still flow, but you are no longer being swept away. You are sitting in a boat on the river, holding the oars. Many people exhaust themselves trying to suppress unwanted thoughts, anxiety, shame, anger. That suppression does not work. The thoughts return stronger because your brain registers the effort as a sign that the thought is important. The only way out is acceptance. Let the thought be there. Do not engage, do not push. Let it float past like a cloud. This is counterintuitive, but it works. What you resist persists. What you allow passes. The realization that you cannot pause your mind is also a relief. You are not failing at meditation. You are not broken. Your mind is doing what minds do. The goal is not to empty the river. The goal is to stop drowning in it. You're stuck experiencing life from only one perspective. You have one set of eyes, one pair of ears, one lifetime. You see the world from a single point, behind your face, inside your skull. No matter how hard you try, you cannot see what your friend sees when they look at the same sunset. You cannot feel what your partner feels when they touch the same fabric. You are locked in. This is not a metaphor. It is the fundamental constraint of consciousness. You are a solitary witness to your own existence. Everyone else is a witness to theirs. You can share descriptions, but not sensations. The sensation is private. Think about a color you have never seen. You cannot imagine it. Your brain has no reference. Another person might see colors you cannot. Some women have 4 types of cone cells and see 100 times more shades. You will never know what they see. They cannot describe it. Language fails. You are trapped in your perceptual bubble. The same is true for emotions. Your sadness is yours. Your joy is yours. You can assume others feel similarly, but that is an assumption. You cannot verify. This solitude is the source of both loneliness and freedom. Loneliness because you can never fully connect. Freedom, because no one can fully judge you. They see your actions, but they do not see your intentions, your inner battles, your secret kindnesses. You're the only one who knows the full story of your life. And even you don't know the full story, only what you remember and interpret. But you are closer than anyone else will ever be. The practical implication is to be humble about what you think others are experiencing. You do not know. That person who cut you off in traffic, you do not know if they are a jerk or rushing to a hospital. That friend who seems happy, you do not know if they are secretly struggling. Your perspective is one of billions. It is not the truth. It is just your truth. Hold it gently. The gift of this constraint is that your perspective is unique. No one else has lived your life, seen what you have seen, felt what you have felt. That uniqueness is not a burden. It is your contribution. You bring something to the world that no one else can bring. Not because you are special, but because your perspective is irreplaceable. Use it well. Your mind fills in gaps you don't see. Look at a word on this page. Your brain does not read every letter. It sees the first and last letters and guesses the rest. That is how you can read misspelled words. Your brain fills in the missing information automatically, without your permission. The same happens with vision. You have a blind spot where the optic nerve connects to your retina. You never notice it because your brain fills in the gap with whatever is around it. You are literally hallucinating part of your visual field every moment. Your brain invents data, and you trust it. Cognitive scientists call this confabulation. When you do not know something, your brain makes it up. Not maliciously, efficiently. It prefers a seamless story to a truthful gap. So you walk around with filled-in memories, filled-in perceptions, filled-in explanations for your own behavior. You think you know why you did something, but that reason is often a post hoc confabulation. The real reason might be unconscious. You will never know because your brain has already closed the gap with a plausible fiction. Consider a time you made a quick decision. Someone asks why. You give a reason. That reason feels true because your brain generated it. But studies show that people often cannot access their real motivations. They invent them. The invention is not a lie. It is a gap filling. Your brain abhors a vacuum. It would rather be wrong than uncertain. So it gives you certainty and you thank it. But the certainty is often false. This has implications for self-knowledge. You think you know yourself because you have access to your inner monologue. But the inner monologue is also a confabulator. It tells you stories about who you are, why you feel what you feel. Those stories are useful but not necessarily true. The real you, the unconscious processes, the automatic reactions, the bodily sensations, is mostly invisible to you. You're a stranger to your own depths. The way out is not to stop confabulating. You cannot. The way out is to hold your self-narratives lightly. Say, I think I feel this way because X, but I could be wrong. That small crack of doubt is the only window to something closer to truth. Not the truth itself, but a little less fiction. You don't fully understand why you are the way you are. Take a trait you like about yourself. Kindness, curiosity, patience. Where did it come from? Genetics? Parenting? A teacher's encouragement? A book you read? You do not know. You can guess, but you cannot trace the causal chain. That trait emerged from millions of interactions between your biology and your environment, most of which you cannot remember. You are not the author of your own character. You are the inheritor of a complex, invisible history. You can take credit for your virtues about as much as you can take credit for the shape of your nose. Now take a trait you dislike: impatience, insecurity, a quick temper. Where did that come from? Same answer. You cannot pinpoint the origin. You can try to change it, that is possible, but you cannot fully understand why it is there. Blaming yourself for your flaws is as irrational as praising yourself for your strengths. Both are largely gifts or accidents. What you can control is what you do next, not where you came from, but where you go. Psychologists call this the introspection illusion, the belief that you have privileged access to the causes of your own thoughts and actions. Studies show that people are often wrong about why they do things. They feel certain, but they are wrong. The real causes, priming, mood, environmental cues, unconscious associations, are hidden. You are a mystery to yourself. The sooner you accept that, the less time you waste on false self-diagnosis. Think about a decision you regret. You probably have a story about why you made that choice. You were stressed, you were misinformed, you were tired. That story is a guess. The full cause involves hundreds of variables you cannot track. The regret itself is based on a simplified narrative. You are punishing yourself for a story, not for the truth. Perhaps that is unfair to yourself. The freedom in not fully understanding yourself is that you are not fixed. If you do not know why you are the way you are, you cannot be trapped by that reason. You can change without knowing the root cause. You can become kinder without understanding why you are irritable. You can grow like a tree grows, not by analyzing the soil, but by reaching toward the light. You're constantly predicting what happens next without realizing it. Reach out your hand to pick up a cup. You did not think about the weight, the angle, the speed. Your brain calculated all of that in milliseconds based on past experience. You predicted how the cup would feel, and your prediction was so accurate that you did not notice the prediction at all. This happens constantly. Your brain is a prediction engine, not a reaction machine. It constantly forecasts the next moment, the next sound, the next visual input, the next word in a sentence. When the prediction matches reality, you experience smooth, effortless perception. When the prediction fails, you feel surprise. Surprise is the alarm bell of a wrong guess. Consider a conversation. You are not just listening to words. Your brain is predicting the next word, the next phrase, the emotional tone. That is why you can finish someone's sentence. That is why a non sequitur feels jarring. Your brain built a model of where the conversation was going, and the model was wrong. Most of the time, the model is right. So right that you do not notice you are using it. You feel like you are passively receiving reality, but you are actively generating it. Every moment of perception is a controlled hallucination, guided by sensory data, but constructed by prediction. This has profound implications for mental health. Anxiety is an overactive prediction system. Your brain predicts threat everywhere. It generates worst-case scenarios and presents them as likely. Depression is a prediction system that expects failure, rejection, or flatness. You feel these predictions as reality, but they are just guesses. Bad guesses. Your brain has learned to predict poorly, and that learning can be unlearned. Therapy, meditation, and medication work partly by retuning the prediction engine. You are not stuck with your forecasts. You can update the model. Think about walking down a familiar street. You do not notice most of what you see because your predictions are accurate. Your brain saves energy by ignoring what it already knows. But a new building, a fallen tree, that grabs attention. Prediction error forces you to wake up. That is why travel feels so vivid. Your models fail constantly. You see everything because you cannot predict anything. The upside of prediction is efficiency. The downside is that you sleepwalk through most of your life, only waking when something goes wrong. The most unsettling implication is that your sense of the present moment is actually a blend of sensory input and prediction. You are not experiencing what is there. You are experiencing what your brain expects, corrected by what actually arrives. If the correction is delayed or faulty, your experience is distorted. That is what happens in optical illusions and hallucinations. But it happens all the time, in small ways. You are always living slightly in the future, projecting forward, then comparing to the now. The now is always a little late. You're a time traveler, and you never knew it. You wake up in the morning. Your brain immediately begins narrating. I slept badly. Today is going to be stressful. I should have gone to bed earlier. These are not facts. They are stories. Your brain generates them automatically, without your permission, based on memories, moods, and habits. You then believe them because they come from inside you. But a story about a stressful day can create the stress it predicts. A story about being tired can make you feel more tired. Your brain is a novelist, and you are a captive reader. Neuroscientists have shown that the brain's default mode network, the system active when you are not focused on a task, is constantly generating self-referential narratives. This is not a choice. It is the brain's resting state. You're always telling yourself who you are, what you deserve, what others think of you. Most of these stories are negative. The brain evolved to anticipate threats, so it leans toward worst-case scenarios. You're more likely to believe they are angry at me than they are neutral. The negative story feels more urgent, but urgency is not truth. Consider a story you have told yourself for years. I am not good at math. I am shy in groups. I am unlucky in love. These stories started somewhere. A bad grade, an awkward moment, a rejection. Your brain encoded that event as evidence and built a story around it. Then you repeated the story, and each repetition strengthened the neural pathway. The story became a belief. The belief became an identity. But identities can be rewritten. You are not your story. You are the storyteller. And the storyteller can choose a different plot. Cognitive behavioral therapy is built on this insight. You learn to catch the automatic stories, to question the evidence, to generate alternative narratives. They are angry at me becomes they might be tired, or I might be misreading. The alternative story is just as plausible, often more so. But you have to practice seeing it. Your brain will keep serving you the old story because it is efficient. The new story requires effort. Over time, effort becomes habit, and the new story replaces the old. You are not stuck with the novel your brain wrote. You can edit the manuscript. The scariest part is that you cannot stop story generation entirely. Even the most disciplined meditator still has narratives arise. The goal is not to eliminate stories. The goal is to recognize them as stories, not as truth. To say, there is the story about being unloved again, and then to let it pass like a cloud. You do not have to believe every thought. Most thoughts are just noise. Your brain is a radio picking up static. You can choose which stations to listen to. And if you notice closely enough, this narration is happening even now as you read this. A part of your mind might be agreeing, another part questioning, another already drifting somewhere else entirely. That is the same system at work, continuously commenting, interpreting, framing experience before you even realize it happened. There is something subtle but powerful in realizing this. The voice in your head is not an authority. It is a process. It does not see reality directly. It predicts it, reconstructs it, simplifies it so you can move through the world quickly. Most of the time, that is useful. It helps you survive, decide, react. But sometimes it overreaches, turning uncertainty into certainty and possibility into limitation. You might notice this most clearly in quiet moments. Standing in a shower, walking alone, lying in bed before sleep. In those gaps, the narration becomes louder, almost like it is trying to fill space that no longer needs filling. But the space itself is not empty. It is just unclaimed by interpretation. And in that gap, something important becomes visible. You are the one noticing the story, not the story itself. That small distance between awareness and narration is always there, even if it feels hidden. And once you notice it, even briefly, you are no longer fully inside the story. You are also the one watching it unfold. You've changed more than you can remember. Look at your hands. They are not the hands you were born with. The cells have replaced themselves many times. The same is true for your beliefs, your preferences, your fears. You have changed in ways you cannot track because the changes happened slowly, beneath awareness. You do not remember the person you were 5 years ago accurately. You remember a simplified version, a character in a story. That character is not you. You have moved on. You are a river, and the water that passed through this spot a minute ago is already downstream. Think about a belief you no longer hold. Maybe you were religious and now are not. Maybe you once thought differently about success, relationships, or yourself. That change felt important at the time, but it was actually the accumulation of many small shifts. Each week, you moved a millimeter. You did not notice the movement until you looked back and saw you were in a different place. Now imagine all the changes you did not notice. The subtle hardening of your attitudes, the gradual erosion of old enthusiasms, the slow growth of new habits. You are not the same person who woke up yesterday. The difference is tiny, but over a decade, it is vast. This has implications for your relationships. The person you fell in love with 10 years ago does not exist anymore. Neither do you. You are two different people, bound by a shared history and a decision to keep walking together. Many relationships fail because one partner expects the other to stay fixed. But staying fixed is not how humans work. Every conversation, every shared silence, every conflict slightly reshapes both people involved. The only choice is whether you change together or drift apart. Change is not betrayal. It is biology. Even your personality is less stable than it feels. You may think of yourself as introverted or anxious or confident, but those labels are summaries, not truths. They describe patterns, not permanence. Put yourself in a different environment, with different people, under different pressures, and those traits shift. The self is context sensitive. It bends without announcing that it is bending. Consider your future self. That person will also be different. They will hold beliefs you would reject today. They will have forgotten things that matter to you now. They will have priorities you cannot fully imagine. That future self is partly a stranger. You cannot control them completely. You can only influence them through small choices today. Each decision is a message sent forward in time. Be careful, but also be kind. Your future self is the one who will inherit everything you leave behind, including your habits, your health, and your unfinished decisions. And then there is the quiet implication most people avoid thinking about. You are already partially a memory in reverse. Parts of you exist only in the past now. Versions of you that no longer activate, no longer react the same way, no longer feel accessible. You cannot summon them back. They have dissolved into history, even though they once felt like you just as strongly as you feel now. Even your body participates in this slow disappearance of sameness. The skin you touch today is not the same skin you touched years ago. The emotional reactions you have now are shaped by experiences you may not even remember consciously. A tone of voice, a smell, a certain silence in a room can trigger responses that come from places you cannot name anymore. You are being shaped by invisible layers of time stacked inside you. The strangest part is that you have already changed in ways you will never remember. The person who experienced your 10th birthday is gone. Their memories are mostly inaccessible, softened, rearranged, or lost entirely. You're a new edition, published continuously without a changelog. That is not a malfunction. That is the condition of being alive. And if you sit with that long enough, something subtle appears underneath it. You are not a single fixed object moving through time. You are time expressing itself as a changing pattern, a process, not a thing. A river that does not just flow, but becomes new water every moment it flows. You're always reacting slightly after things happen. You feel like you are living in the present, but the present is already gone by the time you experience it. Light takes time to reach your eyes. Sound takes time to reach your ears. Touch signals take time to travel up your nerves. Then your brain takes additional time to process those signals, compare them with memory, and assemble them into something meaningful. By the time you become aware of an event, the event is already in the past. The delay is measured in milliseconds, usually too small to notice, but it is always there. You are living in a slightly delayed version of reality, a ghost version, always trailing the real world by a fraction of a second. And that fraction of a second matters more than it seems. It means your experience of now is not the raw world itself, but a constructed snapshot stitched together from what has just already happened. The brain does not show you reality directly. It builds a usable model of it, smooths it, fills in gaps, deletes noise. What you call the present is actually a best guess about what just occurred. This becomes visible in fast-paced situations. A tennis player returning a serve cannot react to the ball in real time. The ball moves too fast. Instead, they predict where it will be and swing early. Their conscious reaction would always be too late. Elite athletes train to act before they are aware of acting. Their bodies move in the gap between event and awareness. That gap is where skill lives. But it is also where illusion lives. You think you are responding to what just happened. You are actually responding to what your brain predicted would happen. The prediction is usually accurate enough to keep you safe, but it is still a prediction, not reality itself. Consider driving. You press the brake when the car ahead slows down, but your conscious awareness of the brake lights occurs after the light has already hit your eyes and been processed. Your foot often begins to move before you have decided to move it. Yet everything still feels unified, as if one clean decision produced one clean action. In truth, multiple layers of processing happened beneath awareness, and consciousness only arrived at the end to explain it. This raises uncomfortable but fascinating questions about free will. If you are always reacting after the fact, are you ever truly choosing in the moment? The answer is both yes and no. You are choosing, but the machinery of choice operates below awareness. Neural systems evaluate, predict, and initiate actions before the conscious mind is informed. Your sense of agency is real, but it is retrospective. You become aware of your decisions slightly after they have already been set in motion. You are the narrator of actions you did not fully initiate. But this is not a flaw in the system. It is a necessity. A brain that waited for full conscious deliberation before acting would be far too slow to survive in a dynamic world. Instead, evolution built a layered system. Fast, unconscious prediction underneath, slower conscious reflection on top. And that layered structure creates something strange, the feeling of continuity. You do not experience the gaps. You do not feel the delay. The brain hides it so effectively that reality feels immediate, seamless, uninterrupted. But underneath that smooth surface, everything is slightly out of sync. Perception lagging behind input, interpretation lagging behind perception, awareness lagging behind interpretation. Even your emotions follow this pattern. You do not feel something at the exact moment it is triggered. Your body reacts first. Heart rate changes, tension shifts, and only then does your mind label the feeling. By the time you say, "I feel anxious," your body has already been in that state for moments. The label arrives late, like a subtitle added after the scene has already played. There is also something quietly humbling about this. Much of what feels like immediate you is actually post-processing. Your certainty, your interpretation of events, all of it is assembled after the fact. The brain turns raw signals into a coherent story, because without a story, experience would be unusable. Chaos cannot guide behavior. Narrative can. The practical takeaway is not distrust of yourself, but perspective. You are not a perfectly synchronized observer of reality. You're a prediction system, constantly updating, constantly slightly behind, constantly trying to stay close enough to the present to function. And yet, despite all this delay, life still works. You still catch the ball. You still break in time. You still respond, speak, move, love, decide. Not because you are perfectly in the moment, but because your brain is constantly leaning forward into what it expects the moment to be. You've already forgotten things you once cared deeply about. Think of a hobby you loved as a teenager, a band you listened to obsessively, a friendship that consumed your thoughts. At the time, it felt permanent, almost structural, like something woven into who you were. You organized your days around it. You returned to it without effort. It filled space in your mind even when you were doing something else. And now, where is it? Not gone in a dramatic way, just absent, quietly replaced. You did not decide to stop caring. It simply faded, like newspapers left in the sun. The colors drained, the urgency dissolved. What once felt central now barely registers. You once cared so much that you could not sleep. You replayed moments, anticipated the next interaction, felt pulled toward it again and again. Now you can go weeks, months, even years without thinking about it at all. That is not a failure of loyalty or depth. It is the normal trajectory of human attention. What matters today becomes background tomorrow. What feels eternal feels that way only because you are inside it. Psychologists call this an affective forecasting error. You expect future feelings to carry the same intensity as current ones, but they never do. the grief that feels endless will soften. Not disappear all at once, but change shape. It becomes a dull ache, then a quiet weight, then something you have to recall. The joy that feels overwhelming follows a similar path. It settles, becomes manageable, then fades into something gentle and distant. Your brain cannot sustain extremes. It adapts, recalibrates, returns to baseline. That adaptation is not a flaw. It is a kind of protection. If every joy remained as intense as the first time, you would burn out from constant stimulation. If every grief stayed as sharp as the moment it arrived, you would not be able to continue. The mind lowers the volume over time, not to erase meaning, but to allow movement. It makes room for the next experience by dimming the last one. Consider possessions you once treasured, a toy you carried everywhere, a piece of jewelry that felt irreplaceable, a book you returned to again and again. Losing it would have felt like losing something essential. And now, you may not even know where it is. The attachment dissolves so gradually you never notice the moment it ended. No clear boundary, no final goodbye, just a slow drift away from importance. This is how attention works. It shifts, reallocates, prioritizes what is new, what is urgent, what is shaping your life. You have limited capacity for caring. When something new enters, something older moves aside. Not because it was meaningless, but because your system cannot hold everything at full intensity at once. The archive of your past attachments is vast, but most of it sits in quiet storage, rarely accessed. And this has an implication that is easy to overlook. Your current pains are also temporary, not in a distant, abstract sense, but in a literal, observable way. The argument that feels overwhelming today will shrink as new concerns take its place. The anxiety that tightens your chest will loosen once the situation passes. Even the experiences that feel defining begin to lose their sharpness as time moves forward. This does not make your current feelings less real. It simply places them on a timeline. You're inside a moment that feels total, but it is not final. Your mind is already beginning the process of softening it. Not all at once, not in a way you can control, but inevitably. There is something both comforting and unsettling in that. Comforting, because nothing holds you in its grip forever. Unsettling, because even the things you want to keep will fade. The moments you wish you could preserve exactly as they are will dim, blur, and become outlines rather than vivid scenes. There is a quiet loss in this process. The things you once cared about shaped you. They influenced your decisions, your identity, your sense of direction. And now, many of them are no longer present in your awareness. That is a kind of disappearance, not of events, but of significance. They still exist in your history, but not in your active experience. But this loss is inseparable from growth. To continue moving, your mind must release what it no longer needs to hold tightly. It does not erase your past. It reorganizes it. It turns intensity into memory, urgency into narrative, presence into background. Without that shift, you would be overwhelmed by the weight of everything you have ever cared about. So what remains is a quiet pattern. You care deeply, as if it will last forever. Then, without noticing, the intensity softens. Something new takes its place, and you move forward again, carrying only a fraction of what once felt essential. This is not betrayal. It is not forgetfulness in the careless sense. It is the structure of a mind built to adapt, to continue, to make space for what comes next. You don't control what feels important to you. Wake up in the morning and notice where your attention goes. Perhaps you reach for your phone before your eyes are fully open, pulled toward messages and notifications. Perhaps your mind jumps ahead to something unfinished, a deadline, a conversation, a vague sense of pressure. Or maybe it is something physical, hunger, stiffness, a small discomfort that suddenly feels central. You did not choose any of these. They simply appeared and took priority. Importance does not arrive as a decision. It arrives as a feeling. Something inside you highlights certain things and dims others without asking for permission. That process comes from deep within your nervous system, shaped by survival instincts, learned patterns, and the current chemical state of your body. You can tell yourself that something should matter, but if your brain does not assign it weight, it will feel distant, abstract, easy to ignore. Your goals, your values, your plans, they exist, but they do not always lead. Often, they follow. Think about a task you have been putting off. You understand that it matters. You can explain why it matters. You may even feel pressure about it. And yet, when the moment comes to act, something else wins your attention. That gap between knowing and feeling is not laziness or failure. It is a mismatch between different systems in your brain. The part that plans operates on logic and long-term outcomes. The part that decides what feels urgent is tuned to immediacy, to reward, threat, novelty. If a task offers no immediate signal, no clear reward, no visible consequence, your brain struggles to prioritize it. You can override that with effort, but effort drains quickly. That is why willpower feels unreliable. It is not designed to carry you indefinitely. The more effective approach is to shift the feeling itself, to make the task more concrete, more immediate, more emotionally charged. When something feels real now, rather than important later, your brain begins to treat it differently. Consider a relationship that ended. You may have decided rationally that it is over. You may even believe that moving on is the best outcome, but the feeling of importance does not disappear on command. The connection was built through repeated emotional reinforcement, shared moments, attention, meaning. Those patterns do not vanish instantly. They fade slowly as they are used less, as new patterns begin to form. This is why certain thoughts return even when you do not want them to. Not because you chose them, but because they still carry weight in your system. Over time, that weight decreases, not through force, but through replacement. New experiences, new associations, new focuses gradually shift what feels important. The old signal weakens, but it does so at its own pace. The reverse is also true. You cannot easily force yourself to care about something your brain has not learned to prioritize. You might understand intellectually that an issue matters. You might even wish you felt more strongly about it. But without a personal connection, without emotional relevance, the feeling remains faint. This is not indifference in a moral sense. It is a limitation of attention. Your capacity to care deeply is finite. Your brain allocates that capacity based on proximity, familiarity, and perceived impact. What is close feels heavier than what is distant. What is specific feels stronger than what is abstract. This is why a single story can move you more than a large statistic. One engages feeling, the other remains conceptual. Recognizing this can shift how you see yourself. You are not failing because your feelings do not match your ideals. You're observing how a system works, one that was shaped long before your current goals existed. You can influence it, but not command it. You can guide attention, create conditions, build associations, but the feeling of importance emerges from deeper layers. So instead of forcing it, you can start by noticing it. Where does your attention go when you are not directing it? What consistently pulls you in? What fades quickly, even when you try to hold on to it? These patterns are not random. They are signals about how your mind is currently organized. From there, change becomes more realistic. Not sudden, not absolute, but gradual. You introduce new relevance, new meaning, new connections. Over time, what once felt distant can become closer. What once felt urgent can lose its grip. The system updates itself slowly, based on what you repeatedly expose it to. There is something grounding in accepting this. You are not the source of every feeling you experience. You are the one who notices them, works with them, adjusts the environment around them. You are not fully in control, but you are not powerless either. You are somewhere in between, shaping the direction, while something deeper sets the pace. You can't fully describe your own experience to anyone. Try to describe the exact taste of a mango to someone who has never eaten one. You might say sweet, tropical, a little tangy. You might try to compare it to other fruits, searching for something familiar, but none of it quite lands. The real experience, the burst of juice, the softness, the way the flavor lingers, cannot be transferred. Words circle around it, but never arrive. Language is a low-resolution map of a high-resolution territory. Your inner world is detailed beyond measure. Words are rough sketches. You can point towards your experience, but you cannot hand it over. And this is not limited to taste or touch. Think about something more abstract, like longing. The quiet ache that settles in your chest, the way time stretches, the subtle pull towards someone or somewhere that is not here. You can describe it with metaphors, a hollow space, a distant echo, a slow burn, but those are only approximations. The listener does not receive your exact feeling. They reconstruct something similar using their own memories. What they feel is theirs, not yours. This is how all communication works. You send signals outward, shaped by your own experience. The other person receives them and rebuilds meaning using their own internal world. Even when it feels like perfect understanding, there is still a translation happening underneath. The match can be close, sometimes surprisingly close, but it is never exact. The gap never fully closes. Consider an argument with someone close to you. You explain how something made you feel. You choose your words carefully, trying to be clear, trying to be fair. They respond, perhaps with understanding, perhaps with confusion. But whatever they understand is filtered through their own perspective, their past, their expectations, their current emotional state. They cannot step fully into your position. They can only approximate it from where they stand. This gap is often invisible until something goes wrong. You assume that, because you have explained yourself, you have been understood. When the response does not match your expectation, it feels like a failure of listening, of empathy, of care. But part of that mismatch is structural. It is built into the way minds work. You're expressing through one lens. They are interpreting through another. Even in moments of deep connection, this remains true. When someone says, "I know exactly what you mean," what they usually mean is, "I recognize something similar in myself." That recognition can feel powerful. It creates a sense of closeness, of being seen, but it is still based on their internal reference points, not a direct access to yours. Writers and artists spend years trying to narrow this distance. Through detail, rhythm, imagery, they attempt to evoke something precise in the mind of another person. And sometimes it works well enough to feel almost like transmission. A sentence lands, and the reader feels a sharp sense of familiarity. But even then, what is being felt is not the original experience. It is a reflection, something constructed within the reader, guided by the work but shaped by their own mind. In that sense, communication is less like handing something over and more like building a bridge from both sides at once. You place words outward. The other person meets them halfway with their own interpretation. Where those efforts overlap, understanding happens, not perfectly, not completely, but sufficiently. There is something quietly freeing in this limitation. You do not have to find the perfect words that will make someone understand you exactly. That standard is impossible. No explanation, no matter how precise, can fully transfer what it feels like to be you. And the same is true in reverse. You will never fully occupy someone else's inner world. What becomes possible instead is a different kind of connection, not based on exact matching, but on presence. Someone may not feel your pain in the same way, but they can recognize that it exists. They can respond with attention, with patience, with care. They can sit with you, even if they cannot fully see what you see. That is often enough. Not perfect understanding, but shared space. Not identical feeling, but mutual recognition. The gap remains, but it becomes less important. You are still separate minds, each with your own perspective, your own texture of experience, but you are no longer isolated within it. You reach outward with imperfect words. Someone else reaches back with their own understanding. And somewhere in between, something real forms. Not complete, not exact, but human. Your sense of self is constantly shifting. Who are you right now? Are you the same person who woke up this morning? In one sense, yes. Your body is continuous. Your name is the same. Your life carries on in a straight line. But internally, something has already changed. Your mood has shifted. Your attention has moved. Thoughts have appeared and disappeared. Memories have been recalled and slightly altered. The you who felt energized earlier is not quite the same as the you reading this now. The shift is subtle, almost invisible, but it is constant. The you who is calm in this moment might not be the same you who reacts under stress later. The version of you that laughs easily with a friend can feel distant from the one that becomes quiet and withdrawn in a different setting. These are not contradictions, they are variations. The self is not a fixed object sitting behind your experience. It is something that forms and reforms as experience unfolds. You are less like a solid thing and more like a pattern in motion. Something that continues but never stays exactly the same. This becomes easier to notice if you pay attention to your own thoughts. A thought appears, holds your attention for a moment, then fades. Another replaces it. Feelings work the same way. A wave of irritation rises, then passes. A sense of ease comes in, then dissolves. At each moment, it feels like, I am thinking this, or I am feeling this, but the content keeps changing. The sense of a stable I sits on top of that movement, tying it together into something that feels continuous. Some philosophical traditions have pointed this out for centuries. They suggest that what you call the self is not a single unchanging entity, but a collection of processes, physical sensations, perceptions, reactions, mental patterns, all interacting and shifting over time. The feeling of being one consistent someone is useful, even necessary, but it is also constructed. If you look closely, you can see it being assembled in real time. You may have experienced moments where this construction becomes less obvious. Times when you are fully absorbed in something, a conversation, a piece of music, a task that requires all your attention. In those moments, there is often no clear sense of me observing what is happening. There is just the activity itself. The distinction between you and what you are doing becomes thinner. Then, as the moment ends, the sense of self returns, reassembling around memory and reflection. This fluid nature of the self shows up clearly across different situations. You are not exactly the same person at work as you are at home. You adjust, often without noticing. Your tone, your posture, your way of thinking shifts depending on who you are with and what is expected. With some people, you feel open and expressive. With others, more reserved. Each version feels real while you're in it, yet none of them fully defines you. The difficulty begins when you try to fix one version as the true self and dismiss the others. That creates tension. You may feel like you are being inconsistent or not authentic enough, but the flexibility itself is not a problem. It is part of how you function. You adapt, respond, shift shape depending on context. That adaptability is not weakness. It is capacity. There is something slightly unsettling about realizing that there is no single, permanent version of you behind everything. It can feel like losing solid ground, but there is also a quiet freedom in it. If the self is not fixed, then it is not locked in place. The patterns that make up your current way of being can change, not instantly, not completely, but gradually. Your past actions were shaped by the version of you that existed then, with its particular thoughts, habits, and conditions. Your future self will be shaped by what you practice and repeat from here. You are not uncovering a hidden, final version of yourself. You are participating in an ongoing process of formation. Seen this way, identity becomes less about finding a definitive answer to "Who am I?" and more about noticing how you are changing moment by moment. The self is not something you discover fully formed. It is something that continues to take shape through attention, behavior, and time. You'll never know how your life actually looks from the outside. You carry a picture of yourself in your mind. You might believe you are kind or thoughtful or awkward or confident. That image is built from your internal experience, your intentions, your thoughts, the reasons behind what you do. But other people do not have access to any of that. They do not see your intentions. They see your actions, your tone, your timing, your expressions. What feels clear and consistent from the inside can look very different from the outside. You might mean to be helpful and come across as controlling. You might feel calm while your body signals nervousness. You might think you are being subtle while others see something obvious. The translation between inner experience and outer appearance is imperfect. Something always gets lost or reshaped along the way, and because you only ever experience your own side directly, you can never fully step into the perspective of someone else observing you. Occasionally, you catch a glimpse of that outside view, watching a recording of yourself speaking, hearing your voice played back, seeing your gestures from a distance. It can feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. There is often a moment of surprise. Is that really how I sound? Is that how I move? That reaction comes from the mismatch between how you imagine yourself and how you appear when viewed externally. Neither version is false. They are simply different angles on the same person. Even those glimpses are limited. A recording captures behavior, but not the full context of how others experience you in real time. Their interpretations, their emotional reactions, their expectations. Each person builds their own version of you, shaped as much by them as by you. Two people can observe the same action and walk away with entirely different impressions. One might see confidence, another might see arrogance. One might hear humor, another might hear insensitivity. This creates a gap that cannot be fully closed. No matter how carefully you act, you cannot control how you are perceived. You can influence it, but you cannot define it. Every interaction passes through someone else's perspective before it becomes their understanding of you. You are part of their experience, but you are not in charge of it. That can feel unsettling. It means there is no single, stable, outside version of you that everyone agrees on. There are many versions, each slightly different, each incomplete. You exist as a collection of impressions scattered across other people's minds, none of which you can fully access. At the same time, there is something grounding in this realization. You are not under constant, precise scrutiny. Most people are focused on their own concerns, their own narratives. You appear in those narratives briefly, then fade into the background. Your small missteps are often noticed less than you think. Your strengths, too, may pass quietly without recognition. You are not the center of most stories. You are a passing character in many of them. The closest you can come to understanding the outside view is through feedback. Someone tells you how you came across. You notice a reaction, a pause, a smile, a shift in tone. Over time, you gather these fragments and build an approximate picture. But even this picture is incomplete. People filter what they say. They soften, exaggerate, misinterpret, or leave things unsaid entirely. What you receive is shaped by their perspective, just as your actions are shaped by yours. So you are left with a partial map, useful but never complete. You adjust where you can, learn what you can, and accept that some parts will remain unknown. The outside view is always slightly out of reach, like something seen through a thin layer of glass. There is a kind of relief in letting go of the need to fully know it. You can focus instead on what you can access, your intentions, your choices, the way you treat people in each moment. You can aim to act with clarity and care, even knowing that the result may be interpreted in ways you did not expect. Your responsibility is not to control how you are seen. It is to decide how you act. The rest unfolds in other people's minds beyond your reach. And that distance, while imperfect, is part of what makes human interaction what it is, layered, uncertain, and quietly complex. You can't experience the absence of your own consciousness. Close your eyes and try to imagine what it was like before you were born. Not the idea of it, but the actual experience. You quickly run into a limit. You might picture darkness or silence or an empty space. But even that image contains something, a viewpoint, a faint sense of being there to observe it. That is the problem. Every attempt to imagine nothing turns into something seen by you. Your mind cannot remove itself from the picture it is trying to create. The same limitation applies when you try to imagine death. You might picture a black void, or endless quiet, or drifting in nothingness. But those images still include an observer, a version of you present to notice the absence. In reality, there would be no observer, no awareness of darkness, no awareness at all. The mind cannot model its own absence, because modeling requires the very thing that would be gone. This makes the idea of non-existence strangely difficult to grasp. Your consciousness is the only place where anything appears. Thoughts, sensations, memories, the sense of being here. It is the stage on which all experience happens. When that stage disappears, there is no scene left to observe, and no one to observe it. Not even the awareness of nothing, just the complete absence of experience. For a limited span of time, you exist as a point of awareness, a window through which the world is perceived. Everything you have ever known has appeared within that frame. Every color, every sound, every thought. Then, at some point, that frame closes. Not into darkness, not into silence, but into nothing that can be experienced. The world continues, but not for you, because there is no you left to receive it. It can help to think about deep sleep without dreams. There are stretches of time where you are not aware of anything, and you have no memory of those hours. They feel like gaps, blank spaces in your timeline. But even that comparison is incomplete. During sleep, your brain is still active. The capacity for awareness is still there, temporarily quiet. Death would not be a pause like that. It would not be followed by a return. It is the end of the process entirely. What makes this idea difficult is not just its abstract nature, but the way it resists intuition. You are used to imagining experiences. Even emptiness is imagined as something you could feel. But here, there is no feeling, no perception, no point of view. It is not darkness. It is not silence. It is the absence of any possibility of those things. Much of the fear around this comes from mixing two different ideas. One is the process of dying, the physical and emotional experience of approaching the end. That can involve discomfort, fear, separation, and uncertainty. Those are real experiences, and they can be difficult. The other is non-existence itself. That is not an experience at all. It cannot be felt, remembered, or endured, because there is no subject left to do any of those things. This distinction changes how the idea feels. You will experience being alive up to the last moment of awareness. Whatever happens, it will still be within the framework of experience. And then, without transition into something else, there will simply be no further experience. Not a continuation in another form. Not an endless void. Just the absence of anything to register what comes next. There is something oddly neutral about that. Not comforting in a conventional sense, but not threatening in the way it first appears. The mind tries to project itself into a state where it no longer exists, and that projection creates tension. But the tension belongs to the attempt, not to the reality it is trying to imagine. Seen this way, the focus returns to what is actually available. Experience is only ever present while consciousness is active. Everything meaningful, joy, discomfort, connection, thought, happens within that span. Outside of it, there is nothing to compare, nothing to evaluate, nothing to fear or hope for. So the question shifts slightly. Instead of trying to understand what cannot be experienced, attention returns to what can. This moment, and the ones that follow, are the only places where anything appears at all. Whatever exists for you exists here, within awareness, while it is present. Beyond that, there is no perspective from which anything could matter. You're always one thought away from feeling completely different. Notice your current mood for a moment. Maybe it's calm, slightly tired, or somewhere in between. Nothing overwhelming, just a quiet baseline. Now imagine a single thought entering your mind. a conversation you've been avoiding, something uncertain, something unresolved. Almost instantly, your body responds. Your chest tightens slightly. Your breathing shifts. A small tension appears. Nothing outside has changed, and yet your experience feels different. Now let that thought pass and replace it with another. A memory of laughter, a moment of ease, something simple but warm. Again, your state shifts. Your shoulders relax, your face softens, your breathing slows. The world around you is the same, but your internal landscape has changed. The difference between those two states is not the event. It is the thought attached to it. This happens constantly, often without you noticing. Thoughts appear, and your body follows. They feel immediate, convincing, almost factual. This will go badly. I handled that well. Something is wrong. Each thought carries an emotional tone, and your system reacts before you have time to question it. In this way, your experience is shaped less by what happens, and more by how your mind interprets what happens. The same situation can create entirely different emotions depending on the meaning you assign to it. A delay becomes a problem, and stress rises. The same delay becomes a pause, and tension fades. The event itself does not change. What changes is the thought layered onto it. That layer forms quickly, often automatically, but it is not fixed. This idea has been explored for centuries. The philosopher Epictetus wrote that people are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them. Modern psychology echoes the same principle. A single event can generate multiple interpretations, and each interpretation leads to a different emotional outcome. The thought becomes the pivot point. You may have noticed this during moments when your mood shifted unexpectedly. You were caught in a loop, replaying something, a mistake, a comment, a worry. Each repetition made the feeling stronger. It felt inescapable. Then something interrupted. A sound, a message, a different idea. The loop loosened. The situation did not resolve, but your experience of it changed. What shifted was your attention. Attention works like a spotlight. Wherever it rests, that area becomes brighter, more detailed, more important. When it stays fixed on a single negative thought, that thought expands. When it moves, the sense of weight changes. You are not erasing the thought. You are changing how much space it occupies in your awareness. At the same time, this system is sensitive. A calm state can be disrupted by a single intrusive thought. A quiet moment can turn tense within seconds. This sensitivity is not a flaw. It reflects how the mind prioritizes potential problems. From a survival perspective, noticing danger mattered more than maintaining comfort. So the mind leans toward what might go wrong. But there is a small opening in this process, a gap that becomes visible when you start paying attention. A thought appears, and for a brief moment, you can notice it as a thought. Not as truth, not as a command, but as something passing through. That moment is easy to miss at first. The thought usually pulls you in before you recognize it, but with practice, the recognition comes sooner. In that gap, your relationship to the thought begins to change. Instead of automatically following it, you can observe it. There is the thought that this will fail. There is the memory replaying again. The content remains, but you are no longer fully inside it. You are aware of it from a slight distance. This does not mean you can instantly replace every negative thought with a positive one. The process is slower, more subtle, but it does mean you are not entirely at the mercy of what appears in your mind. Thoughts can be noticed, questioned, allowed to pass without being reinforced. Some will return, others will fade. Over time, the patterns begin to shift. The most important realization is simple. A thought is an event, not a fact. It is something that happens in your mind, not something you are required to believe. When that distinction becomes clearer, certain thoughts lose their grip. They still arise, but they carry less authority. And within that shift, there is a quiet flexibility. Your state is not fixed. It is fluid, responsive, constantly adjusting to where your attention rests. Even when a feeling seems strong, it is supported by thoughts that can soften, change, or be replaced over time. You are not locked into a single experience. In each moment, there is movement, possibility, variation, and within that movement, something small but powerful remains true. You are always one thought away from feeling different. You don't notice your mind changing while it's happening. Think about the last time you watched a film or series and found yourself unexpectedly siding with a character you didn't like at the beginning. At first, something about them felt off. Their tone, their choices, their attitude. But as the story unfolded, scene by scene, something softened. You began to understand them, maybe even agree with them. The shift didn't happen all at once. There was no clear moment where you decided, now I like them. It happened gradually, almost invisibly. Only later do you realize that your perspective has changed. Most changes in your own mind work the same way. You don't feel beliefs forming or fading in real time. You don't notice habits taking root or interests slowly dissolving. The process is too subtle, too continuous. It moves beneath awareness, like a current under the surface of a river. You are carried by it, but you rarely see it directly. Only when you pause and look back do you notice that something is different. This is part of why self-deception can happen so easily. You may believe you hold certain values, certain priorities, certain intentions, and at one point, that belief may have been accurate. But small shifts begin to accumulate. A minor compromise here, a quiet justification there. Nothing dramatic, nothing that demands attention. Each step feels insignificant on its own. But over time, those steps add up. You don't wake up one day suddenly different. You become different in increments too small to detect. That is what makes the change hard to catch. There is no clear boundary between who you were and who you are becoming. Just a slow movement, like erosion, steady, patient, almost silent. You can see this more clearly when you look at relationships. Some do not end with a single event or a clear break. Instead, they drift. A missed conversation, a small disappointment, a moment of distance. Each one feels manageable, even forgettable. Day by day, nothing seems dramatically wrong. But over months, something shifts. When you finally look back, the difference is obvious. What once felt close now feels distant. The change was happening the entire time, but it never announced itself. Your mind was adjusting, feelings cooling, expectations shifting, in ways that were too gradual to notice moment by moment. It is only visible in hindsight, when enough time has passed to create contrast. This is why reflection matters. Without stepping back, it is easy to assume that you are stable, that your current state has always been this way. Memory smooths over the transitions. It creates a sense of continuity that hides the small changes underneath. But when you deliberately compare past and present, you begin to see movement. You notice that certain reactions have softened, Certain patterns have strengthened. Certain perspectives have shifted. The same quiet process applies to growth. You don't usually feel yourself becoming more patient or more capable. It doesn't arrive as a clear milestone. Instead, one day you respond differently to something that used to frustrate you. You handle a situation with more ease than before. It feels natural in the moment, but only later do you realize that something has changed. Growth, like decline, happens in small repetitions. Choices made daily, often without much thought, slowly reshape how you think and act. You don't see the change forming. You only see the result after it has taken hold. Over time, these tiny adjustments accumulate into something meaningful, even if each individual step felt almost invisible. Because of this, external markers can be useful. Old messages, journal entries, photographs, they act as reference points. They show you versions of yourself that no longer feel current. Without them, it is easy to believe that you have always been as you are now. But those glimpses into the past reveal the distance you have traveled. Even when it felt like standing still, there is something subtle in noticing this. Change is not loud. It does not demand attention while it is happening. It moves quietly, shaping you over time. But if you pay close attention, you can sometimes sense it. A slight shift in how you think about something. A little more ease in a situation that once felt difficult. Those small differences are easy to overlook, but they are the clearest signs that your mind is not fixed. It is always adjusting, always becoming something slightly new. Even when it feels like nothing is happening, something is moving beneath the surface. You've believed things before that now feel completely wrong. Think of a conviction you held years ago. Maybe it was about politics, relationships, or something as simple as what you liked or disliked. At the time, it didn't feel uncertain. It felt obvious. You could have explained it, defended it, maybe even argued for it with confidence. It was part of how you understood the world. Now, when you look back, that same belief might feel distant, maybe even uncomfortable. You see gaps in it, assumptions you didn't question, details you didn't notice. It's easy to judge your past self from where you stand now, but back then, it felt just as real and justified as your current beliefs do today. What changed is not always the world itself. Often, it is the lens through which you see it. New experiences accumulate. Conversations add nuance. Time introduces perspective. You begin to notice things you once ignored. The belief shifts, not because you were foolish, but because you were incomplete. As everyone is, at every stage. That past version of you was working with the tools it had. The conclusions it reached made sense within that limited frame. But the frame expanded. And when it did, the old belief no longer fit. It wasn't erased dramatically. It was replaced quietly, almost naturally, by something that felt more accurate. This is part of what it means to grow. If you look back and find nothing to revise, nothing to question, it likely means you haven't examined your thinking closely. Change in belief is not a weakness. It is evidence that something in your understanding has moved. Certainty, on the other hand, can be misleading. It feels strong, convincing, stable. But that feeling does not guarantee correctness. It only reflects how firmly your mind is holding a particular idea at that moment. Someone can feel completely certain and still be wrong. That has been true for you before, and it will be true again. There is a quiet kind of humility in recognizing this. Not the kind that makes you doubt everything, but the kind that leaves space for adjustment. you can hold a belief while still allowing the possibility that it may evolve. You can say, "This is what makes sense to me right now," without needing it to be permanent. You may have experienced this shift with other people as well, forming a quick impression, deciding who they are, and later discovering that your first judgment was incomplete. What felt clear at the beginning becomes more complex with time. The person hasn't necessarily changed. Your understanding of them has. That same pattern applies to how you see yourself. Ideas like, "I'm not good at this," or "I could never do that," often feel fixed when they first appear. They seem like conclusions, not temporary interpretations. But given enough time and different experiences, those ideas can soften, change, or disappear entirely. The version of you who made those statements believed them honestly. But honesty does not equal permanence. What feels like a stable truth in one moment can become outdated in another. And just as your past self misjudged certain things, your present self is likely doing the same in ways you can't yet see. That realization can feel unsettling, but it can also be freeing. If your beliefs are not fixed, then you are not locked into them. You're allowed to update, to revise, to outgrow what once felt certain. Nothing forces you to remain consistent with a version of yourself that no longer fits. Instead of treating beliefs as something you must defend, you can begin to treat them as something you explore. Questions become more useful than conclusions. Curiosity becomes more valuable than certainty. You start to ask not just, "Is this true?" but also, "How do I know this is true? And what might I be missing?" Over time, this creates a quieter, more flexible way of thinking. You still have opinions, still make decisions, still act. But there is a lightness to it, a recognition that what feels obvious today may feel different later. That understanding does not weaken your thinking. It refines it. And somewhere in that process, you begin to notice a pattern. You are always in the middle of updating. Never finished, never final. Just adjusting, slowly, as new pieces fall into place. And if you pay attention, you might even catch those shifts earlier. Small doubts, quiet questions, moments where certainty loosens slightly. Those are not problems to fix. They are signals that your thinking is alive, still moving, still open to becoming something more complete. You're not aware of most processes that control you. Your heart beats without your command. Your pupils adjust to light without asking permission. Your stomach digests food. Your lungs regulate your breath. Your body balances itself in ways you never consciously direct. These processes are automatic, guided by systems that operate far below awareness. But the same hidden machinery influences far more than your biology. It shapes your behavior, your reactions, even your decisions. You may feel like you are choosing freely in each moment, but your choices are quietly guided by factors you rarely notice. Your level of hunger, the amount of sleep you had, the temperature around you, even the subtle atmosphere of a room. Small details can have surprising effects. The weight of an object in your hand, the brightness of a space, the tone of a voice you heard moments ago. All of these can shift how you interpret situations. These influences do not announce themselves. They simply tilt your perception slightly, and your mind adjusts without realizing it has been nudged. Experiments have shown how easily this happens. In one well-known example, people holding a warm drink tended to perceive others as more friendly and approachable than those holding something cold. The sensation of warmth quietly blended into their social judgment. They did not feel manipulated. This pattern repeats constantly. Your body feeds signals into your mind, and your mind turns those signals into meaning. You feel something first, and only afterward do you explain it. The explanation feels logical, but it is often constructed after the fact. Mood is one of the clearest examples. It feels tied to events. Something good happens, you feel good. Something goes wrong, you feel bad. But underneath, many physical factors are at work. Fatigue, blood sugar, tension in your body. Even subtle internal states can shift your emotional baseline. Then your mind searches for a reason that matches the feeling. A low mood becomes a story about failure. Irritation becomes a story about someone else's behavior. The feeling comes first, and the story follows. Because the story arrives quickly, it feels like the cause. But often, it is simply an explanation layered onto a state that was already there. This does not mean your experiences are false. The feelings are real. The interpretations, however, are flexible. They are shaped by both the situation and the internal conditions you bring into it. Recognizing this does not remove your ability to choose. It changes how you understand that ability. Your influence lies less in direct control and more in indirect guidance. You cannot command your body to feel a certain way instantly, but you can influence the conditions that shape how you feel. Sleep, movement, environment, habits. These are ways of adjusting the underlying systems that generate your experience. In that sense, you are less like a commander giving orders and more like someone shaping a landscape. You cannot force growth, but you can create the conditions where growth is more likely. You cannot eliminate every unwanted reaction, but you can reduce how often it appears and how strongly it takes hold. There is also something humbling in this. The idea that you are fully in control, fully rational, fully aware. It softens. You begin to see that much of what you do emerges from processes you did not design and do not fully understand. Even your sense of making a decision follows this pattern. Often, your brain begins preparing an action before you become consciously aware of it. By the time you feel like you are choosing, part of the process is already underway. Your awareness arrives slightly after the initial impulse. That can sound unsettling at first, but it does not make your choices meaningless. It simply means that choice is layered. There is the immediate impulse, shaped by deeper systems, and then there is your awareness of it. The moment where you can pause, adjust, or redirect. You may not control the first signal, but you can influence what happens next. That space, even if small, is where your practical freedom lives. Over time, how you respond in that space begins to reshape the patterns underneath. So instead of trying to overpower your own nature, you begin to work with it. You place yourself in environments that support what you want to do. You remove friction where possible. You align your actions with the rhythms your body already follows. You stop relying only on force and start using structure. You stop expecting perfect control and start building better conditions. And in that shift, something becomes clearer. You are not the sole author of your behavior, but you are not powerless either. You exist in between, influenced, but also influencing. You can't fully trust the thing you use to understand everything. Right now, you are reading these words and making sense of them. You are deciding whether they feel true, whether they resonate, whether they fit into what you already believe. All of that is happening inside your mind. The same system that interprets the world is also judging the interpretation. There is no separate layer, no external checkpoint. The tool and the evaluator are the same. That creates a quiet limitation. Your brain is capable of insight, logic, creativity, but it is also influenced by bias, fatigue, emotion, and habit. It can misinterpret patterns, jump to conclusions, and fill in gaps without telling you. And when it does, the result still feels convincing. That is what makes it difficult to detect. You cannot step outside your own thinking to verify it from a neutral place. Every question you ask, every doubt you form, every answer you accept is produced by the same system. It is like trying to inspect a lens while looking through it. You can notice distortions, but you cannot remove the lens entirely. This becomes more noticeable when you consider how easily perception can shift. The same information can lead to different conclusions depending on your mood or what you encountered just before. Your mind is not only processing reality, it is shaping it. It highlights certain details, ignores others, and builds a coherent story from incomplete data. That tendency is not accidental. The brain did not evolve to produce perfect accuracy. It evolved to respond quickly, detect patterns, and make decisions under uncertainty. Speed and usefulness often matter more than precision. Seeing meaning where there might be none can be safer than missing something important. Because of this, your mind sometimes favors clarity over correctness. A simple explanation can feel more satisfying than a complex one. A familiar belief can feel more comfortable than a challenging one. The feeling of certainty appears, and with it, the sense that questioning can stop. But that feeling is not proof. It is just another signal from the system itself. History offers many reminders. Ideas that once seemed obvious were later replaced. People reasoned carefully, used the best information available, and still reached conclusions that turned out to be wrong. Their thinking felt as reliable to them as yours does to you now. That raises a difficult question. What might you be misunderstanding at this moment? The answer is not clear, because if something feels completely certain, it rarely appears as a candidate for doubt. Uncertainty hides behind confidence. This does not mean you are incapable of understanding. It means your understanding is always partial. You work with approximations, models, and interpretations that get closer to accuracy over time, but never reach a final, perfect form. Recognizing this does not weaken your thinking. It adds a layer of awareness. Instead of demanding absolute certainty, you can hold ideas more lightly. A belief can be useful without being permanent. It can guide you while remaining open to revision. You can treat your conclusions as the best current version, not the final one. Curiosity becomes more valuable than certainty. Questions stay open a little longer. New information is less threatening because it is not attacking a fixed identity. It is simply updating a model. You are not defending a position as much as refining it. There is also a quiet freedom in this. You do not have to resolve everything immediately. You can allow complexity to exist without forcing it into a simple answer. You can recognize that some things will remain unclear, and clarity may arrive gradually, if at all. Over time, this creates a different relationship with your own thinking. You still rely on it. You have no alternative, but you rely with awareness. You notice how easily it settles into certainty, how quickly it forms conclusions, how naturally it prefers familiar patterns. And when you inevitably discover that something you believed was incomplete or mistaken, the moment changes. It is no longer just an error. It is a correction, a small movement toward something more accurate. So rather than trying to eliminate doubt, make space for it. Not overwhelming doubt, but a quiet openness, the recognition that your mind is powerful, but not infallible, that it can guide you but not perfectly. And in that recognition, something steadies. You are still thinking, still interpreting, still deciding. But now there is a subtle distance, a sense that your thoughts are tools, not absolute truths. You cannot fully trust your mind as flawless, but you can work with it, question it, refine it. And that ongoing process, imperfect, continuous, unfinished, is what allows you to understand anything at all, even if that understanding is never complete. You have walked through 45 thoughts that unsettle, that whisper at the edges of what you thought you knew. They are not meant to leave you frightened or paralyzed. They are meant to leave you curious. The mind is a strange instrument, beautiful and flawed. It invents, forgets, distorts, and yet it also loves, creates, and wonders. You are not broken because you cannot trust it completely. You are human, and humans have been wrestling with these questions for thousands of years. You are in good company, so breathe. Let the thoughts settle like dust after a long walk. You do not need to solve them tonight. You just need to rest. Tomorrow, the world will still be strange, and you will still be curious. That is enough. Sweet dreams.